I cannot believe Sonic Heroes is 20 years old now. I have a lot of nostalgic attachment to this game, but I never really got a chance to play it as a kid. I remember always looking up the cutscenes for Sonic Heroes back in the day, and I also remember desperately trying to find an Xbox copy of it at Movie Gallery. God, I miss Movie Gallery. But I never found Sonic Heroes. The only game I managed to find was Shadow the Hedgehog, but that's a story for another day. Development of Sonic Heroes began approximately around April 2002. I'll clarify this estimate in just a moment. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was just released on GameCube in February, along with Sonic Mega Collection being released in November, and the DX port of Adventure 1 was getting worked on and later released in 2003. Obviously, the demand for a brand new Sonic game was pretty high, and the game that would end up becoming Sonic Heroes faced a lot of challenges from the very start of its development. This would end up becoming the first real multi-platform Sonic game to not be tied to a single console, along with the first one to not be made for a Sega console. Not only that, but returning director Takashi Iizuka would want to take a new direction for the game. He didn't want to just make a Sonic Adventure 3, mainly since he worried it would have only really appealed to Sonic fans, and he wanted this new game to appeal to a much wider audience. He also wanted to incorporate a brand new team mechanic, as another way to help differentiate it from the adventure games. However, because this was set to be the first multi-platform Sonic game in the series, that meant 3 different console ports for GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox would have to be made and released both on time and at the same time. Gotta love those Sega mandates. So Sonic Team would have to ditch the gameplay engine they made for the adventure games, and would work out a deal with Criterion Software to use their renderware engine, in an effort to make porting the game easier. That development team, by the way, was the same 19 staff members from Sonic Team USA who worked on Sonic Adventure 2. And while Iizuka did claim that SA2 was the most fun he ever had making a Sonic game, Sonic Heroes would end up being the exact opposite. This game was met with incredibly strict deadlines by Sega, so the team crunched, and they had to crunch hard. In an interview with Nintendo Power, Iizuka revealed that Heroes development only lasted 20 months, and in one of the most insane stories I've ever heard, there were only 2 people on the team that were in charge of the level designs, which was him and another employee, Itario Toyota. I'm sorry, I totally butchered that Japanese name, but whatever, what else is new? And at one point, Toyota became ill and couldn't come into work for a while, and unfortunately because of the deadlines, Iizuka couldn't really just stop what he was doing, so he had to just continue doing all the work on his own. He crunched so hard while working on this game that he claimed to have lost about 22 pounds, along with suffering from insomnia. With how much hell the team went through making Sonic Heroes, it's a miracle that the game came out as stable as it did, for the most part. Especially too when you consider all the ideas they initially brought to the table. Remember how fans were initially upset about Tails not being playable in SA2? Well, Iizuka and the rest of the team wanted to outdo this worry by adding in way more playable characters. This would involve the return of 3 members of the Chaotix: Vector the Crocodile, Espio the Chameleon, and Charmy B, with all 3 of them getting redesigned by Yuji Yukawa too. While these 3 were originally from the 1995 failed Sega 32X attachment game, Knuckles Chaotix, or just Chaotix in Japan, Iizuka wanted these revamped versions of the characters to be newly introduced instead, basically ignoring the original Chaotix game entirely. Not to mention, just about every character from the adventure games would get brought back, which would weirdly include Shadow the Hedgehog, who we literally saw die at the end of Sonic Adventure 2. Kinda similar to the initial Tails outcry, fans desperately wanted to see Shadow return in some form, so Iizuka kinda just threw him in by the looks of it. I couldn't really find anything confirming that Shadow was never meant to be brought back for Heroes, but the closest confirmation I could get was a tweet from Shadow's original creator, or one of his original creators, Shiro Meikawa, who was Adventure 2's scenario writer and would also come back to write Heroes. Sometime later, Meikawa-san posted about what his original list of teams were going to be for Heroes, which completely left out Shadow, and would not only see the return of the Chaotix, but it also included Mighty the Armadillo, Ray the Flying Squirrel, all of Team Hooligan, being Fang, Bark, and Bean. He also had Rouge on a team with Amy and Cream. Meanwhile, Big was going to be on a team with Chaos and E102 Gamma? Plus, Metal Sonic was going to be on a team with Mighty and Ray. What an interesting choice. It was pretty neat that Meikawa-san revealed what his original team lineups were going to be. But again, I don't think this outright confirms that Shadow was never going to be brought back for Sonic Heroes, but seeing this list does kind of make me wonder if Meikawa-san had a bit of resentment with Iizuka when he decided to bring the character back. It's also fascinating seeing Metal Sonic get paired with Mighty and Ray, because while the latter two wouldn't return for another 15 years, Metal Sonic would be made the primary villain for the game, which was pretty cool because at this point in the 3D games, the most he really had was a cameo in Sonic Adventure, later becoming an unlockable skin in DX, and he was playable in Adventure 2's multiplayer. So seeing Metal Sonic finally have a role as a huge villain again is really cool. Not only that, but Sega would make the decision to release Sonic Heroes in the series' 12th anniversary in 2003, which would also be the 10th anniversary of Sonic CD, and in turn, Metal Sonic as well. And they would stick to that deadline, by the way, because the game's initial release would happen in Japan on December 30th, 2003. Meanwhile, just about every other country got the game in early January 2004. Why not just let it be a 2004 game? That is such an old school Sega decision to release the game at a very specific time period, all while a completely asinine development schedule kept forcing the devs to crunch horribly to finish the game, not to mention trying to sort out multiple versions of the game too, and to help build up hype for Sonic Heroes, and for shits and giggles I guess, Sega would market 2003 as the Year of Sonic, which also included the debut of the anime Sonic X, along with there being a McDonald's Happy Meal tie-in. Wait, Sega crunching the latest Sonic game just so it could be in time for a McDonald's tie-in? Oh no, not again! Oh, and they would also release a demo for Sonic Heroes, which appeared on a bonus disc that was included with special versions of Mario Kart Double Dash, which had 2 full levels and they're slightly different compared to the final game. There's not too much to really highlight here, just a cute little piece of gaming history and memorabilia. While we're still on the topic of this game's marketing, who the hell thought this tagline was a good idea? Despite the McDonald's fiasco, this image of Sonic with the Happy Meal is literally one of my favorite things ever. I love the costume so much. Actually, it looks quite similar to the costume that appeared on the Rosie O'Donnell show back in 1999, which even featured Ryan Drummond doing live voiceover as Sonic. The footage of this was lost for a while, but it was recently uploaded online, and for fans like me, it is insane hearing Ryan's Sonic voice in material I've never seen before.
Hi, Sonic!
Hey, Rosie!
How are you? Good to see you!
Never been better.
Sonic
Good
the
to see you.
Hedgehog, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Quiet,
Rosie.
let me finish the show.
All right.
Toysfortots.org on the web.
Ryan would even voice Sonic in a couple McDonald's commercials too, which, depending on when he may have recorded lines for Sonic Advance 3, these commercials may have ended up being the last times he ever got to voice Sonic in any official media.
Impressive, isn't it? Dude, looks like you could use one of these.
You can get into the action with one of these handheld Sonic games in every McDonald's Happy Meal.
I'm loving it.
Yes, I talked about the McDonald's promotion just to play these clips from the commercials. They're cute as hell.
Happy Meal.
Get happy.
Fun fact, Ryan claims that he apparently made an extra $1,000 from residuals just for recording these commercials.
So I was doing this show, and it was, just a killer show. And while I was doing this show, Cotton Patch Gospel, the ad agency for Sonic was in Chicago. And they called me, and they said, hey, listen, they're putting Sonic toys in Happy Meals in England, and we need you to come in and do a tagline for the commercial that's going to run only in England. And she was like, it's a Class A spot, though, so that's good, because for those of you who aren't in the business, a Class A spot means that you get residuals. Every single time that the commercial plays, you get a little chunk of money. They call and say, we need you to come in and do these lines. So they work it out that I come in first thing in the morning, because, of course, England is 9 hours ahead or whatever. So it's beginning of the day for me, it's end of the day for the people that are on phone patch from England. And so I walk into the booth, and the script was on the stand, and it was a piece of paper, and it had 2 words on it. It said, get happy.
Get happy.
And so the people are on phone patch from England, and they're just like, if you can just give that to us 10 times, that would be great. So I literally went into the booth, and I was in there for 60 seconds, and I just said, get happy, get happy, get happy, get happy. Get happy. And just gave it to him 10 times. I went back to my show, and I forgot all about it, because it was literally 1 minute long. About 2 weeks later, the commercial starts playing in England. And so about 2 weeks later, I get a paycheck in my mailbox, and it's like $400. For the rest of the summer, for like the next 2 months, I literally had between 1 and 6 checks show up in my mailbox every single day for just Get Happy. And literally that summer, I think it was 2003, I literally made $12,000 for saying 2 words.
You think McDonald's ended up paying Ryan more for voicing Sonic than Sega ever did? But not only was this McDonald's promotion going on, but there were also 2 other games that got released during this year of Sonic. These wound up being Sonic Pinball Party and Sonic Battle. Pinball Party, at the very least, had another developer helping make it, but Sonic Battle, that was entirely Sonic Team. I'm gonna assume that Sonic Team USA were the ones that were crunching on Sonic Heroes. Meanwhile, Sonic Team back in Japan had to handle Sonic Battle. If that part's true, then I'm glad the US team wasn't being completely screwed over having to work on more than one game at once, but at the same time, wow, this is a fucking mess. It's almost like Sega's long-standing mistreatment of their own development teams was just asking for a huge failure to happen in the future. Hopefully that didn't end up being the case. Oh wait. But yes, Sonic Heroes was miraculously released at the very tail end of 2003. They literally just made it. While development for the GameCube version went on without not too many issues, for the Xbox and especially the PS2 versions, despite securing the renderware engine, Sonic Team USA still had virtually no experience with the Xbox or PS2 hardware, and they also had very little time to figure both out because of all the deadlines. This is why the Xbox and PS2 versions have performance issues in comparison to the GameCube version. Well, mainly the PS2 version. The Xbox version honestly isn't that bad, just suffering from some slowdown issues and a few graphical faults. But the PS2 version suffered the absolute worst in terms of porting. The frame rate was cut in half from 60 to 30, along with looking and sounding the worst in comparison to all 3 versions. Plus, all 3 console versions got released on the same day in Japan, and got released close by each other in early 2004. And when it comes to the PC version, it was released 11 months after the initial console versions, and this version was directed by Shiro Mikawa, the scenario writer for the game. The PC version isn't terrible either, and it could probably be debated as being the best version of the game, especially with mods, though there are minor issues with it if you play it vanilla. But overall, it's not a horrible version of the game, and I'd recommend it to anyone interested. There's even gamepad support, which is pretty interesting. When Sonic Heroes was initially released, it received some pretty decent reviews. Not glowing praise like some of the better Adventure 2 reviews, but the reaction to Sonic Heroes was relatively okay. The one consistent thing was that the PS2 version received the worst scores for its overall poor performance and generally bad optimization issues. The game also sold insanely well, selling over 3.41 million copies, most likely due to the game benefiting from being the first multi-platform Sonic game. And just for reference, Sonic Adventure 1 sold 2.5 million on Dreamcast, and SA2 Battle sold 1.7 million on GameCube. So yeah, technically Heroes outsold the adventure games. So I guess despite the game development being crunched to hell and back, in the end, reviews weren't terrible and the sales were good. So despite what some may think of the game, Sonic Team USA still kinda nailed it. So fuck you, Sega! I'll preface this now, but I love Sonic Heroes. It's not my favorite 3D Sonic game, but I'd probably rank it in my top 10. I think the first time I got to play this game was on PC, around like 2012, 2013 maybe. I think it was like a digital download off some sketchy website, but I tried my best to play through Team Sonic's story. I don't think I finished the game though. Eventually I ordered the GameCube version, and I still have this copy after about a decade. And I eventually went out of my way to get every other version of the game too. And as you can clearly see, I got the voice of Sonic, Ryan Drummond, to sign all 4 copies that I own. He even added funny little comments on them that I want to point out. First he signed my GameCube copy at Sonic Revolution 2019, and then about 4 years later at Sonic Revolution 2023, I brought my other 4 copies of the game that I had him sign too, with him writing on the PC version, "We're Sonic Heroes," and then on my Platinum Xbox copy, he wrote, "It's me, in Platinum." On my PAL GameCube copy, as you can see the logo's all reflective and shiny, and Ryan noticed that too, so he wrote "Rainbow Fun." And then finally on my PlayStation 2 copy, he wrote, "How many copies do you own, Coop?" Ryan is genuinely one of the best guys I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, and I can't wait to see him again. Also, yeah, I have 5 copies of Sonic Heroes, with 2 of them being on GameCube. The reason I have a PAL copy is because this specific version of Heroes also suffered a bit during the game's development. You see, if you boot this game up on GameCube with HDMI, or component cables if you can afford those, hold B as the game is starting, and it'll ask you if you want to play in progressive scan, being 480p instead of 480i. But for the PAL GameCube release of Sonic Heroes, Heroes, if you turn on the 60Hz option, it doesn't actually play the game in 60Hz. Instead, it runs the game in 50Hz, but just speeds up the game by like 20%. So yes, the PAL GameCube version of Sonic Heroes with the 60Hz mode turned on is the fastest version of the game, and you can really notice this in levels like Rail Canyon and Bullet Station. It is insane. I don't even understand how this happened, and it's only with the PAL GameCube version of Sonic Heroes. The PAL version of Heroes on Xbox doesn't have this issue, and PS2 Heroes is fucked no matter what country you're playing it in. I'm kinda shocked not a lot of people seem to know about this with PAL GameCube Heroes. I think speedrunners could probably benefit from playing this version, so I thought I'd spread more awareness about this. Talking about the packaging real quick, something you may notice about Sonic Heroes on the spine, it's that it's just the title of the game in impact font. I guess they couldn't find a good way to make a squashed version of the logo to put on the side, but what's even funnier is, remember that Sega Superstars game on PS2? You know, the weird minigame title that used the iToy? It also uses the impact font, just like Sonic Heroes. I don't get it, what happened here? Was Sega just getting lazy? Okay, whatever. For this re-review, I'm gonna be cutting back and forth between the GameCube, Xbox, and PC versions, and all the footage for the PC versions in widescreen, so get used to the aspect ratio changing a bunch. I just want to show off all the versions of the game as much as I possibly can. Kinda similar to what I did with the 3D Blast re-review, which also means this video is gonna be a bitch to edit like that one was, but whatever. Hope you guys appreciate my effort. I'm also gonna try to not use too much footage of PS2 Heroes, since it literally plays the worst out of all the versions, but I will bring it up occasionally if I want to compare things. I know this is the part of the review not a lot of people are going to care about. There are timestamps in the description if you want to cut straight to the actual review. Unless you're watching this in a compilation video, then you're screwed. But I don't think you guys really understand just how much I love this game. The initial Cooper's Perspective episode was an hour and 16 minutes. And I remember going into that review about 8 years ago thinking, oh, it's just Sonic Heroes. I don't think I'll have that much to say about it. You fucking idiot. I also recorded every version of the game on authentic hardware, using the GC HD Mark II adapter for GameCube, and I even went out of my way to spend over $300 on the much revered XRGB Mini Framemeister, just so I can capture decent footage of the Xbox and PS2 versions on their original consoles. I know normal people are probably watching like, Cooper, what the fuck is a Framemeister? Meanwhile, the people who actually know their shit are just like, wow, Cooper, the Framemeister? You did all of this just for Sonic Heroes? You didn't have to. Yes, I did, because no one else would. Probably. This fandom is filled with other lunatics who make just as lengthy videos. I know I'm not that special. But for those of you who are maybe curious about what the Framemeister is, I'd recommend checking out My Life in Gaming's RGB series, where they talk about the history of game consoles and getting the best picture quality out of all these old systems. They explain this shit way better than I ever could. I also want to dedicate this whole video to my childhood Xbox. I got it back in Christmas 2004, and just a few months ago it stopped working. The Xbox version of Sonic Heroes was literally the last thing I ever used it to record footage for, so may it rest in peace, and thank you for all the memories. I did order another one, but I'm sure that one's probably gonna die soon too, so I might just have to get the original fixed or something. So without further ado, to celebrate the game's 20th anniversary, here is my re-review of one of my all-time favorite Sonic games, Sonic Heroes. Look at the length of this video, please help me! Starting off, Sonic Heroes has 4 main stories to play through. Team Sonic with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, Team Dark with Shadow, Rouge, and new character E123 Omega, Team Rose with Amy Rose, Cream the Rabbit, and Big the Cat, and the last team story being Team Chaotix, with returning Chaotix members Espio the Chameleon, Vector the Crocodile, and everyone's favorite, Charmy the Bee. The plot of this game is incredibly basic, with each team providing their own points of view and their own exclusive events happening in their respective stories. Team Sonic starts out with Sonic running about doing his thing, until Tails and Knuckles fly by in the tornado. Tails gives Sonic a letter they got from Eggman, who basically taunts the boys about how he's back and he's gonna try to conquer the world in a few days. So Sonic heads off with Tails and Knuckles to stop Eggman once again. The Doctor really just sent them this letter so they could come after him, huh? Couldn't he have tried to just conquer the world without notifying Sonic ahead of time? Or maybe, is it part of his scheme? Also, kind of impressive that he printed out a GIF, it seems. Like, how's he talking on the letter? And why the fuck did he call them the Sonic Heroes? I know it's the title of the game, but they never explain why they suddenly start calling themselves that.
Guess what, Sonic Heroes? I finally developed the ultimate weapon. In 3 days, I'll conquer the world. Think you can stop me?
In Team Dark's story, we see Rouge break into one of Eggman's facilities in search of Eggman's secret treasure, as she describes it. But upon entering the room, she ends up releasing none other than Shadow the Hedgehog, appearing to have survived his fall into the atmosphere at the end of Sonic Adventure 2. Not only that, but once Shadow is released, E123 Omega activates and starts shooting at Shadow, even briefly calling him one of Eggman's robots. After a pretty brief scuffle, Rouge gets the two of them to settle down and decides to form a team with them. Omega, it turns out, hates Dr. Eggman for locking him inside the room with Shadow and wants to go destroy the Doctor. Meanwhile, Shadow has amnesia?
And you can't remember anything, can you?
Hey, Rouge, you maybe want to help him out with that? Like, really, of all the characters to find Shadow first, how does Rouge not have a million questions to ask him? Or hell, why doesn't she be the one to tell him about his past or anything? Why does she just scoff it off like, oh yeah, you have amnesia, who cares? Let's go on an adventure. You probably don't know who the fuck I am, but whatever. Moving on, in Team Rose's story, Amy's reminiscing about Sonic when she gets joined by Cream the Rabbit and Big the Cat. Cream's little chow friend, Cheese, has a brother named Chocoa who turns out to be missing. And it also turns out Big lost Froggy again. But in a newspaper that Amy's reading, there's a picture of Sonic in it where he appears to be carrying both Froggy and Chocoa. So Amy decides that the three of them need to go out and find Sonic, since finding him could possibly mean finding both Chocoa and Froggy again. Along with Amy just getting to see Sonic again. When it comes to Team Chaotix's story, surprisingly, they probably have the most involved and in-depth story compared to the other three. Charmy shows up with a package containing a walkie-talkie, and a mysterious person on the other end asks them for help, offering to pay them too. And since, well, they need rent, the three detectives head out to find out who the mystery person is, all while the other teams cross paths with each other from time to time. The endings for the main three stories are kinda basic. Team Sonic defeats Eggman and ends up crossing paths with Team Rose too, with Amy chasing down Sonic. Oh, and on Team Rose's end, they found Chocoa and Froggy too, in case you wanted to know. Team Dark ends with them defeating what they think is Eggman, and Rouge stumbles across a room filled with Shadow robots, which leads to her thinking the Shadow that's been with her and Omega might be a fake. However, Omega does inform her that if all these copies of Shadow exist, then that must mean the original has to be alive somewhere. Spoilers, he's been with them the entire time. But at the end of Team Chaotix's story, they defeat Eggman and walk off, with Vector finding out who the mysterious voice on the walkie-talkie is. It turns out to be Eggman. Yup, the Eggman that we saw melt away in all the other stories was a fake. The real Eggman was locked away so the true villain of the game could try to take over the world. Who was it? It's Metal Sonic. Why the fuck are you surprised? Turns out, Metal Sonic purposely set up all the teams to go on this adventure. That way he could collect data from everyone in an effort to become the most powerful being in the world. This leads to all four groups coming together at the end to witness Metal Sonic transform into his ultimate form. For a really long time. I know it's easy to make fun of how lengthy this transformation sequence is, but I can't lie. I really love how stylized the CG cutscene looks here. Plus the quick edits and the fast pacing, I just think it's pretty terrific. Well, Metal Sonic is now a giant freaky monster known as Metal Madness, so all four teams have to join together to defeat him, which ultimately leads to Team Sonic using all 7 Chaos Emeralds to go super, with Super Sonic, Tails in a Super Shield, since he needs the Super Emeralds to go super, and Oh, okay, fuck it, no Super Knuckles. Obviously, the Supers defeat Metal Sonic, with Sonic taunting him that if he ever wants to fight again, he'll be waiting. Team Sonic runs off, Knuckles chases after Rouge, the Chaotix chase after Eggman for their money, and Metal Sonic is picked up by Omega, who's joined by Shadow. I always thought it was interesting that these two were attending to Metal at the end, but it doesn't really lead anywhere. The game ends with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles jumping in a freeze frame as the credits roll, with the franchise going severely downhill the next time we see these guys. But that was the plot of Sonic Heroes. On a surface level, it's far less complicated and easier to follow in comparison to the adventure games, which is kind of both a positive and a negative. The positive is that it's very free-flowing, you don't really need to think about it too much, you're just on this fun adventure with all these colorful characters trying to defeat the big evil that brings them all together at the end. But when it comes to the negatives, this is more so over the fact that there's a lot of aspects in the story that probably could have been benefited from being more detailed. For example, there are points where the characters cross paths with each other and end up fighting, but their dialogue exchanges are usually sped through way too fast. It gets to the point where it almost doesn't make any sense why they're fighting. But what's easily one of the worst handled aspects, or I guess the worst handled character in the game, is Shadow the Hedgehog. Like I brought up before, he just appears out of nowhere after presumably dying in SA2, and Rouge, of all characters, is the first one to see him again. Like, why didn't we get cutscenes of Rouge asking Shadow about his memory loss? It's barely even explored, and it's almost like, why did they even bother? here. She was literally there in SA2 and saw Shadow sacrifice himself. Why did she give him nothing? What makes it stranger is that the scenario writer for Sonic Heroes is the same writer as SA2, Shiro Mikawa, one of Shadow's original creators. As far back as my Cooper's Perspective review of this game, I always got the impression that maybe Mikawa-san wanted to explore this amnesia-ridden Shadow a bit more, but maybe most of his ideas were cut. If so, I think that may have been Iizuka's choice, with his reasoning probably being, oh, we're doing the Shadow spin-off game after Heroes, we'll explain everything in that game, for better or worse. I don't know, that's just always been a game theory on my end, but I wonder too if there was more resentment from Mikawa-san about how Shadow's characterization was being handled in this game. But the one part in Team Dark's story that really doesn't make much sense is the cutscene that happens after the Bullet Station boss fight. Here, Shadow sees this robot Shadow on the ground. This is meant to be one of the Shadow robots we see at the end of Team Dark's story. But in the context of this cutscene, why is there a random Shadow robot? Later on in Shadow's own game, there are some enemies in a few levels that are Shadow robots you can fight. So part of me thinks that maybe the Shadow robots were originally going to be in Heroes, you know, maybe exclusive to Team Dark's story, which would have explained this random destroyed one in the cutscene. However, the Shadow robot enemies are not in Sonic Heroes. So why is there just some random Shadow robot destroyed in this cutscene? Did Metal Sonic just place him there just to fuck with Shadow or something? Haha, you have amnesia. Also, you might not be the real Shadow. Look, it's a robot Shadow. Are you a robot? Ooh. Hell, in the cutscene after Bingo Highway, we see Eggman telling Shadow that he doesn't have a past to remember. But remember, this isn't Eggman. It's Metal Sonic in disguise. So I really like to think this is just Metal Sonic fucking with Shadow just because he wants to. What a dick.
Tell me, Doctor, what was I doing? Asleep on that base? And what about my memory?
Your memory? What memory? You have no past to remember.
What?
Honestly, Shadow's entire involvement in the game is really the weakest part of the story. The only reason I don't really see it as that huge of a deal is because this game's tone is so ridiculous. And most of the cutscenes are very fast-paced too, so you don't really get enough time to see things get fleshed out. So cutscenes like Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles seeing Shadow again for the first time are super underplayed. Like, I assume Rouge saw Shadow die from afar, but Sonic was literally there. He was right fucking next to Shadow when he saw him fall to Earth. But what's the first thing he says upon seeing Shadow alive again?
Talk about being stubborn and full of surprises.
What? A lot of the dialogue in Heroes feels like this. Just very underdeveloped and also not serious at all. But I also wonder if mistranslations muddied things too. But the only real noticeable time I saw a mistranslation was when Rouge said this.
Hey, Omega, did I ever tell you that Shadow is a robot? And
once again, Wendy made some pretty excellent videos retranslating Sonic Heroes' Japanese script, so I'll provide links to her videos in the description if you guys are curious. While I do wish the cutscenes in Sonic Heroes had a little more depth to them, I can't lie, they're pretty entertaining and amusing to watch, even after 20 years.
Sounds like an invitation to party.
What are we gonna do, Sonic?
No worries, we've got this one.
Gotcha, my darling Sonic.
Amy, what are you doing here?
Sonic, this time there's no way out of marrying me.
Didn't you know? We have a date with Eggman, too.
Is that so? Well then, it'll be a date to die for.
Hey, that's my line.
What's up, SBO?
And you are...
Just what do you think you're doing here?
Who's this broad?
That is still Vector's best line. While I did complain that some aspects of Sonic Heroes' story were undercooked, I do appreciate that Mikawa-san at least tried to keep the continuity intact in some aspects. Mainly with Metal Sonic, who's the main baddie of the game, and also got a really sick redesign in Heroes. This version of him is known as Neo Metal Sonic, and he just looks badass. It's really cool. It's how he looks throughout most of the game, and we don't really get to see the normal Metal Sonic until the very end. But basically for Metal Sonic, since he's the main villain, part of his plan was to purposely lure out some of the teams, just so he can gather data from everyone. At the end of Bullet Station for Team Sonic, he says this.
All lifeform data successfully copied.
And then for Team Dark, he says this.
Ultimate lifeform data has been copied.
He copied data from Shadow because of their encounter. That's not only a really cool way of explaining how Metal Sonic becomes so powerful at the end, but I also like that this cutscene subtly hints that the Shadow that's with Rouge and Omega actually is the original Shadow this entire time, since Metal Sonic was able to copy data from him. That's a great detail. I like that. However, my favorite bit of Metal Sonic copying data comes from Team Rose's last cutscene.
Chaos data has been copied.
Chaos Data! A clear reference to how back in SA1, Froggy came in close contact with Chaos, since he swallowed his tail back then, making it possible for Metal to copy said data and become even more powerful. He copied data from the fucking frog! And it's also a great way to tie heroes into the adventure game story. I always appreciated that. The cutscenes in Sonic Heroes are mostly pre-rendered, being handled by Visionscape Incorporated, who I also think developed that weird Sonic Extreme proof of concept skating game on Xbox. If anyone remembers that, the cutscenes still look a bit dated. This is now a game from 20 years ago, but they always gave me kinda similar vibes to the CG cutscenes from the adventure games, which were handled by a company called Super 78. I love how stylized they can look and really fit the overall tone of the game. Plus, Omega's CG model looks incredible, holy shit. Also, do you guys remember Sonic Mega Collection on PS2 and Xbox? It was a fine collection, but it got rid of a lot of the bonus videos that were in the original Mega Collection on GameCube. That was probably the most disappointing aspect of Plus, but the bonus videos it does include are work-in-progress videos of Sonic Heroes opening FMV and the Team Dark opening cutscene. It even includes the final version of the cutscenes too. I'm not sure why these are the only two behind-the-scenes videos we have for Sonic Heroes, but if you want to see more into the production of these FMVs, then go look up the videos from Sonic Mega Collection Plus. I know I'm not talking about the soundtrack yet, but in the early version of the opening cutscene, they included an early rough recording of Johnny Giolelli singing the Sonic Heroes theme, but the lyrics obviously weren't finalized yet, so apart from the main chorus, it's mainly just Johnny scatting along to the theme song, which is pretty funny. It's also pretty neat getting to hear this early version of the theme song.
Sonic Heroes, Sonic Heroes.
By the way, in the original Xbox version, since I'm assuming they had more disk space, the cutscenes are at a much higher resolution on that version. Like, I had no clue you could see the inside of Omega's chest in these cutscenes, until I played the game on Xbox and saw them in higher quality. The cutscenes had to be compressed for the GameCube, PS2, and even the PC version. But if you're interested, fans did make mods to put the high quality Xbox cutscenes on PC. In terms of sound mixing, it's pretty good, especially in comparison to how the adventure games handled that. The game has a theater mode for rewatching all the CG cutscenes, which is neat, but there's a very minor difference with how they can play out in the game versus in the theater. At the end of their last cutscenes, the team's respective theme song starts playing, which leads into the credits. However, if you watch the cutscenes in the CG theater, the theme songs don't play, making you able to hear the character's dialogue a lot clearer. This is mainly helpful for Team Dark's closing cutscene, because Shadow and Rouge have a very brief exchange that you can't really hear very well because of the music, and Rouge's last line isn't subtitled either. But if you watch Team Dark's cutscenes in the CG theater, you can actually hear what Rouge says at the end.
I might as well go look for that Master Emerald, since that irritating echidna's here.
Some things never change.
What are you saying? What else is that famous treasure supposed to do? I might as well go look for that Master Emerald, since that irritating echidna is here.
Some things never change, do they?
What are you saying? What else is a famous treasure hunter supposed to do?
There are separate in-game cutscenes before most of the odd-numbered levels, but they're super brief and are mainly used as quick intros for the stages. And the sound mixing here is pretty solid too. You can hear the characters just fine, and they don't talk over each other like in SA2. Though, depending on which version you're playing, some background elements might overtake the characters' voices, but I'll address this a little more later. Also, if you're playing the PAL GameCube version in the 60Hz mode, not only does it speed up the gameplay, but it even fucks up these little stage intros. As a result, the characters can overdub each other like they did back in SA2, which is pretty funny.
Looks like Eggman escaped into the city.
Eggman's robots are taking control of everything.
Let's find Eggman and show him the real power of teamwork. Looks like Eggman escaped into the city.
Eggman's robots are taking control of everything.
Let's find Eggman and show him the real power of teamwork.
Another thing I always appreciated about Sonic Heroes was the voice acting. I'm not going to spend too long talking about the returning actors, but I really think this was some of their best performances. Ryan Drummond, Scott Dreyer, the late Dean Bristow, Jenny Duyard, David Humphrey, Lonnie Manella, and John St. John all returned from the previous games, with most of them playing the same roles as before. I can praise Ryan, Scott, Lonnie, Jenny, and David for hours, which I'm pretty sure I've already done so in dozens of videos, so I'm not going to waste your guys' time with that all again. But it does break my heart that once all these guys were at the top of their game, Sega would kind of just discard them like nothing, but that's a story for another day.
Ha! Think I'd miss this? Time to crack that Eggman wide open! Yeah, let's party!
Come on, tell me you weren't scared. If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have had a chance.
Enough of this! Sonic, take Knuckles! Time to meet your maker!
Now I know what to do. Find Eggman and I'll find my Sonic. You all ready?
Long time no see, boys. Too bad you had to come all this way for nothing. We'll take it from here.
What'd you say?
You'll regret this, Doctor. Even if I'm not real, I'm still the ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog.
Dean Bristow, however, I will highlight since this ended up being one of his final portrayals as Eggman. Technically not his last performance since he did record some stuff for Sonic Battle and Advance 3, but Heroes would be the last time he voiced the Doctor in such a huge capacity. I know some people can be very hit and miss about the Adventure cast, but it always felt like Dean as Eggman never really caused that huge a split. Most of everyone really liked him in the role. I go back and forth whether SA2 or Heroes was his best performance, but with Heroes, it genuinely sounds like he was having a lot of fun voicing him. The dialogue can often feel like a Saturday morning cartoon, so playing the villain in that must have been great.
Once again, you fools have been tricked.
Trying to stop us now? Ha! What a joke!
What did you say? Now I'm really mad. It's useless. Metal Sonic has combined your data with the power of chaos and is super strong. We can't defeat it. If only we had the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Past your bedtime, kiddies. Now to tuck you in.
Dean Bristow would sadly pass away in January 2005, which was actually shortly after Sega got rid of the Adventure cast and brought in the 4Kids actors, which did cause a huge fuss online and made fans think they only recast everyone because Dean died, but that's not actually the case, and again, it's a story for another day. Dean Bristow will always be my favorite voice for Dr. Eggman. He just brought this energy and appeal to the character that I can't really describe too well, and I personally don't think anyone else who stepped in the role really captured. His voice was just so wonderful and fun to hear. I'm sad that he didn't get to live long enough to go to fan conventions and not just meet the fans, but even previous actors he worked with like Ryan. It also would have been nice to see him do more stuff. Sure, maybe we could have got those cringy as hell videos of fans filming him and asking him to do repetitive things like, "Oh, say, get a load of this!" But so be it. I just wish he was still here, and I really do wonder if he would have enjoyed getting to meet the fans. We're never gonna know the answer to that, but for now, rest in power, Mr. Bristow. No one did this better than you. You truly are the Eggman.
Even with the Emerald's power, our chances for victory are slim. It would take a miracle.
So, in Sonic Adventure 1, the robot character E102 Gamma was voiced by the late Steve Brody, who tragically passed away in August 2001, shortly after the release of SA2, where he also voiced the President. In Sonic Heroes, we got a new robot character, the fan favorite E123 Omega. He's voiced by John St. John, who would also reprise his role as Big, and I love his Omega voice. The voice filter is really sick, and it seriously enhances Omega's personality as a no-nonsense robot out there to destroy Eggman.
Must eradicate all Eggman robots.
What do you think, Omega?
Sensors jammed. Real Eggman ID not possible. Sensors locked on Eggman. Non-compliant intruders will be destroyed.
Fun fact, by the way, in both the Mario Kart Double Dash demo and some early builds of Sonic Heroes, fans managed to find these unfiltered Omega voice clips. Like, they're the same takes that would appear in the final game, but they just don't have the voice filter on them. So if you're curious and you want to hear John St. John's Omega voice without the filter, then go look it up. It's pretty interesting.
Prepare to infiltrate. Do they really think they have a chance? I am Omega, the ultimate E-Series robot.
Moving on to another new character, Vector was voiced by Mark Biaggi. Interestingly enough, Mark was actually in SA2. He was the voice of Gerald Robotnik. It was a small part, and while the voice direction wasn't perfect in that game, I still think he really nailed that part. And that praise, by the way, is completely transferred over for his Vector voice, because this is my absolute favorite voice for Vector ever. He just sounds cool as hell, and very adult too, which is fitting since he's the oldest member of the Chaotix. It seriously breaks my heart that Mark got the performance down so perfectly here, and they just got rid of him after Heroes. This was his only time he voiced Vector, and I think he is vastly underappreciated in the role, and I will never stop praising him.
It's all part of being a good detective.
Why do you think we're here? How else are we gonna make the rent?
But what about our money?
Man, I almost forgot. That's light ball!
When it comes to the last 4 voice actors, one was a replacement and the other 3 are completely new. A quick one to highlight is Sarah Wooflick as Cream the Rabbit. Cream, to me, never really had a voice I had an issue with, but I really like Sarah's Cream voice. Just kinda sad that this was one of the only times she got to voice her, the other being Advance 3.
I bet you're the ones who took Chocolate Chow.
What?
Amy, are you sure Mr. Sonic is here? No doubt about it. My heart is never wrong. Then it must be so.
The last 3 I'll highlight are roles that were handled by 3 members of the Corkery family, Emily, Bill, and William. Emily Corkery was the voice of Charmy, the first voice of Charmy. I don't have any complaints or really any praises either. Charmy's meant to be a young, hyperactive bee, and Emily did a solid job voicing him. Also, kinda similar to Cream, Charmy's never really had a voice I had an issue with. So yeah.
What's wrong with you?
It's here, we've got work!
What?
Yeah, time to rock and roll! Take this, you bad man!
Bill Corkery voices Espio, and I just love Bill's Espio voice. It sounds very deep and intense, and I just really love that for Espio's character. It's so cool.
Where there's light, there's shadow. Careful. Talk about a huge misunderstanding. Impossible feat. Ultimate ninja power.
The third Corkery, and probably the most controversial one, is William Corkery as Tails. Tails had to get recast again after SA2, so when Bill Corkery and his studio were used for Heroes, he got his 2 kids to voice characters in the game, with Emily voicing Charmy and William voicing Tails. And people have not been kind to William's take on Tails. I've been pretty tough on it too, and after all these years, yeah, it's not amazing.
Sonic, we only have 24 hours left!
Okay, let's go!
Sonic, check this out! Sonic, you sure this is the right way?
I saw Shadow and Eggman head this way. This has gotta be the right way.
But it's so spooky here!
I think my main issue with the voice is kind of the lack of inconsistency. He doesn't really match the tone or mannerisms as the Bringus brothers from the adventure games. But I also have to admit, his Tails voice has kind of grown on me. Obviously, it's not the best Tails voice, far from it. But whenever I do replay the game and hear his voice, I just get the impression that this performance is from a little kid who really wanted to be in a video game. He was literally 8 years old when he recorded these lines, and was most likely a huge Sonic fan at the time, so it just must have been really cool and fun to voice Tails in an official game. And it was also paired with Ryan Drummond as Sonic and Scott Dreyer as Knuckles. I'm fucking jealous, dude. Plus, he's got a lot of energy too, which can sound grating for some people, but I personally really love how much effort he's really putting into the performance. And according to Bill Corkery, a pretty common voice direction he would give to both Emily and William when they were in the studio was apparently more energy. I could really hear that from their performances, especially for Charmy. But at the same time, William is trying his absolute damnedest as Tails. And out of all 3 Corkerys, he debatably had the biggest shoes to fill. So I was pretty tough on him at first, but nowadays, William, if you're watching, you did your best and I appreciate that. So come on guys, let's stop bullying this poor kid, especially for a voice performance he recorded like 20 years ago.
Maybe that's the ghost of Shadow we saw earlier.
Woo! Stop it, Knuckles!
Fun fact, William was on an episode of Drake and Josh. He was in the season 2 episode #1 fan. He played a kid named Pete who was like a huge asshole. This is one of my favorite episodes and I find it really funny that William was in it. Plus, Dan Schneider didn't direct this episode, so he was safe. But yeah, go check out this episode if you haven't seen it.
So, when's the wedding? You know, that wasn't nice. Who said I was nice?
This won't be the last time I mention the voice actors in this video, which I'm sure will please the returning viewers who hate when I spend too much time talking about these aspects of the game, but I do appreciate the supportive comments from people saying they don't mind when I talk about the voice acting for too long. So honest to God, I've actually thought about doing maybe a separate video altogether focusing mainly on the history of the voice cast. Maybe I'll do that, and the people who hate when I talk about it can go on that video and bitch there, and of course they'll get replies from sane people who are just like, this video's literally about the voice cast, what were you expecting? But to please all the assholes watching this video, I'll move on to the gameplay. For a quick recap, Sonic Adventure 1 had 6 different gameplay styles, Sonic Adventure 2 had 3, and Sonic Heroes, despite technically having more characters to play as, there's really just one main gameplay style. The main gimmick with Sonic Heroes is the team mechanic. You can control 3 different character types in each team, and you can switch between them using the face buttons on screen. But not every character type can play the same. First there's the speed characters, which are Sonic, Shadow, Amy, and Espio. They're obviously the fastest characters to play as and are more than likely the ones you're going to use the most. Each of the speed character can use the homing attack, but they also have 2 other moves. First is the tornado jump, where the speed characters can create a tornado to sweep the enemies off their feet, along with unarming certain enemies with shields. And in certain parts of the levels you can come across these poles, which you can travel up by using a tornado. It's also a pretty broken move, which I'll talk about later on. The second move that each speed character has is the Rocket XL, which pretty much replaces the spin dash, and it's nowhere near as useful or fun. Seriously, I rarely ever use this move. I sometimes forget it even exists. While all the speed characters can share those 2 moves, there are other abilities that not every speed character shares. For example, only Sonic and Shadow can use the light dash from the adventure games, which functions just like it did in SA2, for better or worse. The speed characters can also perform wall jumps, which can be super helpful for platforming, but for whatever reason, Amy is the only speed character that can't wall jump. I don't get that. Though there is one thing about Amy that kinda redeems this, but after you jump with Amy and hold the jump button, she can do a pretty sick hammer glide. I really love this move, and I kinda wish it was a staple thing for 3D Amy. And focusing on Espio real quick, he can't light dash, but he does have the ability to throw ninja stars, and when he does the tornado attack, he can turn invisible, which helps him sneak past enemies and get into certain areas. I'll admit, I barely use this, but it's still pretty cool. Moving on to the next character type, Power, which is a character type given to Knuckles, Omega, Vector, and Big. Each of the power types can attack enemies in their own ways. Knuckles and Omega can punch them out, Big can toss Amy and Cream at enemies using his fishing lure as a baseball bat, and Vector also tosses Espio and Charmy at enemies, but he spits them out. By the way, the characters can talk throughout the levels, along with making battle cries of sorts when they fight enemies. The reason I'm bringing this up now is because the sound that Vector makes when he throws Espio and Charmy is the funniest shit. I don't know how Lonnie Manoa got those noises out of Mark Biaggi, but I'm proud of her. The power type also has its own glide move known as Triangle Dive, where the characters form a triangle in the air and can glide for a bit. Though for Team Rose, Big uses an umbrella, and Vector uses bubblegum, which I do think are cute. It's mainly used for having fans send you straight up in the air. It's a fine move, but I do find it kinda strange that the power types can't glide on their own. You know, like Knuckles and Rouge did previously. Why is it always a triangle? When it comes to the flying type characters, which includes Tails, Rouge, Cream, and Charmy, they always carry the other 2 characters. That way they can fly around with them, and can also shoot them at enemies using a move known as Thunder Shoot. Obviously, the flying characters can fly, which is really handy for more careful platforming, but also know that there's a flying meter that limits how long you can stay in the air. I think this aspect was handled pretty well, though on the Xbox version you can kinda see the outline of the meter going down. Oh yeah, on extremely rare occasions, the flying characters can actually be controlled separately from the other 2 characters, and they even have their own solo attacks. Tails and Rouge can send out dummy rings. Yup, this is where that stupid move from 06 came from. Cream can send cheese at enemies, which is almost exactly how she plays in Advance 2, and Charmy can sting enemies. It's about as effective as you think. I think it's pretty cool that they gave the flying types their own moves, but again, you rarely get to control them like this. While it's not a huge loss, I am kinda sad that we can't play as Cream on her own. Solo Cream is probably my favorite flying type. With how broken she is in Advance 2, I'm sad that we couldn't use cheese like that in 3D. Though for anyone curious, there is a mod on the PC version that lets you control the flying characters on their own. I had no choice but to install it. It was the only way I could record the flying characters using their moves. And that's the basic summary of the team mechanic. It is a pretty fun gimmick, but you're probably wondering, what exactly is the point of switching characters? Like, couldn't you just stick to the speed character and that's that? Well, I guess you could, but the way the game encourages the player to use the other characters is pretty cool. First off, the enemies, mainly consisting of the new egg pawns, have health bars now. And while you could just spam the homing attack over and over again, using the power type is more recommended since they'll be able to kill enemies faster. And like I mentioned, some enemies have shields, so you either have to plow through them using the power type, or use the speed character's tornado move to get rid of the shields. However, there's one aspect about the team mechanic that easily makes it better. Your character's attacks can actually get stronger. They can level up 3 times, and each upgrade really benefits the game. For example, if the speed characters are at level 3, then the homing attack can instantly instantly kill most of the regular enemies like in the previous 2 games, but I'd actually say the power and fly types benefit the most from the level ups. When a flying type is fully leveled up, they can one-hit kill enemies using the Thunder Shoot, which is cool, but the upgrades that the power types get are a lot of fun. Pulling off 3 combos can make a special attack occur, with Knuckles sending out fireballs, Omega launching several missiles, Bit can spin his fishing lure around to kill the enemies with a wrecking ball, and Vector can send out a bunch of bubble gums. Though even at level 2, Vector can breathe fire, and Omega can get a flamethrower attack, which is pretty badass. Also, when you run past a checkpoint, it'll level up whatever character you're playing as, which is insanely helpful for reaching level 3 for all your teams. However, what's probably the best thing about the team mechanic is a special move you can use known as the Team Blast. As you destroy enemies and mainly just gather points throughout the levels, you can build up this meter at the top right. Once it's filled all the way, press the Z button if we're going off the GameCube version, and it'll cause the teams to perform this huge attack on enemies with different side effects. Team Sonic has the standard outcome, which is that it'll obliterate every nearby enemy on screen. For Team Dark, not only does it kill every enemy, but it can also temporarily freeze everything too. It'll even freeze the timer as well, so I'm sure speedrunners get a kick out of that move. This can halt your progress in a few levels until the side effects wear off, but if you want to move along faster, you can't just tap the Z button again to immediately unfreeze everything. Also, despite the fact that Team Dark's Team Blast can freeze everything, if you activate a pole while everything's frozen, you can still travel up it, it'll just be invisible. I'm not sure how many people knew about this, so thanks David Soul6ris, I love you. Team Rose probably has the best side effects, where not only do they kill every enemy, but each character gets a level up, and you get the invincibility power up and a shield. That is really cool. Also, I love the way the power shield looks in this game. Instead of being green or blue like before, it has a rainbow effect on it. I kinda wish this was made the standard for the shield in 3D. It's just so pretty. For Team Chaotix's Team Blast, not only do they obliterate everything with singing, but every enemy they kill can actually reward them with a ring box. And, well, since ring boxes can help fill your Team Blast, you'll most likely be able to use another Team Blast immediately afterward. Also, fans ripped the voice clips from this game, and they found the raw files for SBO, Charmy, and Vector singing during their Team Blast, and it is goofy as shit.
Born in the darkness to live in the darkness, that's the ninja's creed.
Bee, bee, bee! Charmy the bee! Charmy the bee's got lots of honey!
Yeah, I'm the one, I'm Vector the Crocodile.
Did Mark Biaggi just do the Seth Rogen laugh? However, there's one special move you can do shortly after using a Team Blast, which I almost forgot to mention and all of you in the comments were gonna bitch at me for not talking about. You can use the Lightspeed attack. Yeah, the same one from the adventure games. So before the Team Blast gauge goes all the way down after using it, as the speed character, you can activate the Lightspeed attack by using the Tornado, which will cause Sonic to attack all the nearby enemies. The Lightspeed attack can also enhance the power characters doing the Fire Dunk, and the flight characters doing the Thunder Shoot. I didn't know the Lightspeed attack was even in the game. I only found out about it after watching my best friend Anthony play the game and he performed the move. I was shocked. So thanks, Anthony. This won't be the only time I thank him in this video. Bitch. The Team Blast is a great move, and it can be very useful for when you're dealing with a swarm of enemies all at once, but it could probably be tiring for some players to have to refill the meter over and over again, especially if you're at a pretty difficult part of the game but you don't have the Team Blast meter filled yet, unless you know a certain exploit. There is a glitch you can do with the flight character that I honestly always use when I revisit Sonic Heroes. To do it, you need to have the flying character selected, and then on the controller, carefully press both the attack button and a character switch button, like B and Y if you're playing on GameCube. You have to press them at the exact same time, and if you do this correctly, it'll switch your characters, but your flying character is going to do a Thunder Shoot while glitching out. It looks kind of funny at first, but the thing is, you can fill the Team Blast meter by performing attacks. So if you can master this simple trick, that means you can use this little Thunder Shoot exploit to refill the Team Blast meter really fast and at any point in the game. I know this is technically cheating, but kind of similar to the animal exploit in the Chow Garden. I love this glitch. It seriously makes getting through certain levels in the game less nerve-wracking. I was able to pull off the glitch on all 3 console versions, but for some reason I couldn't get it to happen on the PC version. But I'm not sure if it was patched out, or maybe my controller inputs just don't register the same as they do on console. On the topic of that, the PC version obviously lets you use a keyboard to play the game, but it actually does have built-in gamepad support, though I'd still recommend installing X input mods. The main reason I wanted to mention this is because what controller from 2004 is the PC PC version using as the face buttons. Like, the buttons on screen are gray, and there's even a round Z button? Does anyone know what controller this is based on? It's always fascinated me. So getting back to the team mechanic, for the most part, it's handled pretty decently. However, there are some pretty big issues. The first one is, well, the main thing that hurts it, the controls. For the power and flying characters, they're good enough, but the speed characters can be completely heinous to run around with. Ironically, they can run way too fast, to a point where if you're not careful, then you'll most likely fly off platforms and fall straight to your death. With how perfectly the controls were handled in both adventure games, seeing the speed characters controlled this horribly is such a major downgrade. It's not unplayable or anything, it just takes some getting used to. But if you want my recommendation, switch to the flying character as often as you can. That way you can handle some of the more difficult and tighter platforming sections with ease. But this leads to my main gripes with how switching characters was handled. A pretty common complaint is that you can't switch characters when in mid-air, which can be a bit annoying when you're trying to use the fans to glide, but you can't switch to the power type unless you're flat on the ground. And there's even more dangerous times when you're falling straight to your death that switching to the flight character could have easily saved you. I heavily agree that we should have been able to switch characters in mid-air, but there's another annoying feature with the team mechanic that I don't see enough people talking about. Not only are you not able to switch in mid-air, but if the other characters are knocked out or stunned, you can't switch to them at all. It's only for a brief couple of seconds, but it can happen very often in some of the later levels that it becomes annoying. The last big issue I have with the team mechanic is mainly with how the button choices were handled. Describing how it works on the GameCube controller, you can switch characters from left to right using Y and X, which are of course wrapped around the A button. It works well, but I can't help but think the game designers kind of fumbled the bag here by taking away two main face buttons for no reason. This was the first Sonic game to be made on other 6th-gen game consoles, all three having two analog sticks. This meant we finally have a second analog stick that can be used for camera controls, which Sonic Heroes does map it to, but it also uses the L and R triggers to control the camera too? I know that this was how the camera worked in the SA1 and SA2, which were Dreamcast games where the console only had one analog stick, but Heroes wasn't a Dreamcast game. So why did they waste the L and R triggers for camera controls? You know what happens when you take away two face buttons on the controller in place for other things? We get shit from the previous games, like all the main moves in this game being mapped to the same button. So you can come across problems like in SA2 where you'll likely try to use the light dash on a trail of rings, but you'll end up doing a rocket excel. Or maybe the light dash just doesn't feel like working, which is always fun. Pro tip, jump before you use the light dash. It usually works most of the time. Why did they map multiple moves to the same button again? Whose choice was this? Yuji Naka? I'm blaming Yuji Naka. You know what I personally think they should have done? Why not use the L and R triggers to switch characters, have all the camera controls locked to the right analog stick, have the B button used for the rocket excel, power attacks and whatnot, and maybe move the light dash to the Y button or something? Hell, jumping forward for a bit, even the Shadow the Hedgehog game remapped the light dash, and it works a million times better. Like, the Shadow game actually fixed this. But also, if you're having difficulty with how certain mechanics work or which character you should probably use to get past a certain section, don't worry, the game will guide you along. Constantly. Occasionally, you can come across these question marks that you can activate in order to hear a character explain to you how to do a certain thing. But if that's not enough, every level has these separate speed, fly, and power signs floating everywhere. You come across them really frequently. Even in the last level, they still have these signs. Not only that, there are even these gates you can run through that automatically switch you to a certain character the game wants you to play as. Okay, conceptually, I understand why they thought these may have been a good idea, but does anyone else find it a bit weird and a little annoying that the game chooses which character you should play as? I know the main demographic for Heroes were casual gamers and not Sonic fans, but this game isn't made for babies, what the fuck? And if that somehow isn't enough, Team Rose has you play through a tutorial level where Omochao, voiced again by Lonnie Manella, explains to you the mechanics of everything in excruciating detail. You can skip each dialogue box, but holy crap, this can be a long tutorial if you decide to sit through everything.
Hello, I'm Omochao! In this stage, you can practice different types of actions. Listen to me carefully, and you will learn a lot.
But I will admit, one kind of cute thing is that in the game's menus, you can press a button to bring up Omochao, just so we can explain more things in the game. So while the tutorial levels complete hell, I do think this aspect is cute.
Team Sonic features high-speed gameplay and intense team action. This mode is for watching the CG movie. You can change the setting for the Rumble feature. In order to play 2P, you need 2 controllers.
If somehow none of that was able to help you play the game, in the actual levels, the characters don't stop talking.
Look at all those Eggman robots! Eggman's robots are up to no good again. Take out the robots first!
They're firing at us again! Do they think they can hit us?
Here they come.
Omega, attack them!
Eggman robots must be eliminated.
Wow! I can't believe this flower can actually fly! I feel like I've become one with the flower!
Proceed with caution and be careful not to fall.
Yeah, you don't even have to activate the question marks. The characters just babble on, sometimes telling you how to play the game or just random shit. I know I praised this aspect in my original review of the game, but if you're someone like me where you've played this game more times than you really need to, and also recorded multiple playthroughs and had to hear the exact same voiceovers over and over again, it gets really old. As much as I love this voice cast, holy shit, Sonic Heroes does way too much hand-holding. Way more than what the adventure games did. I have no clue why this game treats the players like they're really dumb. I really think there should have been an option to shut off both the signs and the voices in the levels. While it is weird that they didn't give us the option to shut all this crap off, in the PC version, there actually is a way to turn off all the characters constantly talking. You have to go to a configuration file for the game, and then add a line of text in it that says Charmy_shut up, which is both hilarious and also mean. Like, geez, why does Charmy get so much hate, even from the game devs? Despite the fact that I have been complaining for a good bit, I do love Sonic Heroes and its gameplay, but I just can't help but think certain aspects of it could have been handled better, and I will highlight more of these issues when I look at the levels. But here's another fun fact thing about the PC version. Since this version came out later on, they added a new free camera option. I didn't really mess with it or figure out how it works, but if you're curious, it's there. Every version also has this first person mode you can activate by standing still and moving the camera. I don't know why you'd ever want to use this, but if you want to look at the shinier character models, there you go. And while I did complain about the characters talking in the levels too much, I do like a lot of their idle dialogue. It can be pretty charming and funny.
This place would make a great vacation spot.
Wonder if there's any jewels around here.
Just part of the job.
There's so many plants I've never seen before. Eggman, we're coming to get you.
Flying ships. How mysterious.
Look at all those ships. I wonder if we can take one.
Eggman must be really rich. Wonder if he'd hire us. God, I forgot to pay the electric bill for the office.
Also, if you look at Rouge, she'll wink at you. So there's that. Oh, I probably should have brought up how they redesigned Rouge in this game. I'm guessing they did this after parents apparently complained that she looked too sexy in SA2. But I'd probably reckon that a redesign makes her look hotter, like Jesus Christ. I love Rouge's outfit though. I'm kinda sad this was the only time she ever wore it. Plus, there's an early version of the redesign where she was wearing darker colors instead of her usual pink. I kinda like the way it looked there, having the same color schemes as Shadow and Omega, but I also totally get why they went for the final design in Heroes. I feel kinda mixed about everyone else's character models. I like how stylized they can appear, but they're so freaking shiny. Even the rings are super shiny. They look like glazed donuts. There's a visual overhaul mod on the PC version that makes their models look less shiny, and I actually think it makes them look a bit better. And weirdly, with the exception of Rouge, the Shadow game would reuse the exact same models from Heroes and somehow make them shinier, which is hilarious and makes them even more out of place for that game. What the fuck? But these character models fit way better in Sonic Heroes than they do in Shadow the Hedgehog because holy crap. Sonic Heroes probably has my favorite art style in the entire franchise. Like, I highly recommend getting the PC version and modding it to play in HD because it looks absolutely stunning. Seriously, I think an HD version of Sonic Heroes, if handled right, would really flourish with this art style. I still think it holds up, and it's probably the closest we've ever really gotten to the Genesis games being in 3D. I'm pretty sure that was a main goal for the game's art direction, and the team really nailed it. I'd also highly recommend looking up the concept art for this game because it is some of the best concept art any 3D Sonic game has ever had, and I'll be sure to highlight some of my favorite ones when I look at the levels later. The soundtrack is definitely a huge highlight. Jun Sonoy returned as the sound director, and coming right off the adventure games, he and the rest of the sound team really knocked it out the park for Sonic Heroes. I personally think Sonic Heroes has one of the most underrated soundtracks in the series. It feels a little overshadowed because it came right after the acclaimed adventure game soundtracks. I think it has a great sense of variety, just like SA1 and 2, but more so SA1. In fact, I'd probably go as far to say I think Sonic Heroes has a slightly better soundtrack than Adventure 2. I still think SA2 is one of the best soundtracks in the series, but I'd rank Heroes slightly higher. When it comes to the vocal themes, in my opinion, they're a tad bit weaker compared to the ones we got in the adventure games. But I still really love them, and I think they fit the tone of Heroes perfectly. Each team gets their own vocal theme, just like how the characters had their own themes in the previous game. games, and they can all vary in genre too. Team Sonic has a vocal track called We Can, and it's sung by the City Escape singers, Ted Poley and Tony Harnell. I really like the song, but I will admit it kinda pales in comparison to both versions of It Doesn't Matter, and even Escape from the City. At the same time, I love the instrumentation, and hearing Ted and Tony singing together again is a lot of fun. It is a goofy but uplifting song to listen to, and I really enjoy it.
We can make it, we all stick together, we won't give up, not ever, and everything's gonna be alright. We all bring out the best things in each other, together we are stronger than anyone else could be on their own, so much better than alone.
Team Dark's vocal theme is called This Machine, and it is definitely one of the better vocal tracks. In fact, I would probably say it's the best one in the game, but it ain't my favorite. Unlike the other vocal themes where June hired singers to sing on the songs, this track was handled by an electronic band known as Julian K. While I haven't really gone out to listen to the rest of their stuff, I really love the way This Machine sounds. What's pretty interesting about this song is that it's being told from the point of view of Shadow, exploring his memory loss and just seeking whoever the hell he even is, with the help of Rouge and E123. It's also the heaviest sounding song, which just makes it more badass. Again, Julian K did a really great job with this song. I also recommend checking out the track Waking Up, which Julian K made for the Shadow game. Most of the vocal tracks in Shadow are pretty forgettable to me, but Waking Up was definitely a highlight. In a way, it's almost like a cool follow-up to This Machine. So go check that track out if you really enjoy Team Dark's theme song.
Waking up, breaking out, this is what it's like to be free. Rip it up, tear it down, this is what it means to be free. One step to cornerstone inside you.
Team Rose's vocal theme is Follow Me, sung by Kay Hanley. This vocal theme is pretty similar to Team Sonic's We Can, where it's pretty goofy sounding and probably one of the weaker vocal tracks, but I just really like this song. I think it fits Amy Rose's personality, and I just can't help but be in a good mood whenever I listen to it. The drumming on the song is especially amazing. I think it's pretty underlooked. It's not an amazing song, but it's not bad either. And Kay Hanley sounds great on it too. I love when we get female-led vocal tracks.
Follow me inside, outside, through the stratosphere, the moon is shining for you, knows that I adore you, suddenly all the sadness will just slip away, and you will see what I mean, if you just follow me in my dreams.
The last team vocal theme is Team Chaotix. Yeah, theirs is just called Team Chaotix. Being sung by Gunnar Nelson, this vocal theme is honestly a lot of fun. While This Machine is probably the best one, Team Chaotix is my personal favorite. It plays out like this great anthem for the Chaotix, especially the parts where the singers chant Team Chaotix during the chorus. It's really fucking cool. I love this song. With June being the sound director, this meant Crush 40 was brought back to make a new theme song for the game. However, we don't just get one new Crush 40 song, but two! I'll look at the second song later on, but when it comes to the first track, being the Sonic Heroes theme song, I love it. Is it one of my top Crush 40 songs? Probably not. And I know this theme song gets some mixed reception from some people, but I just can't help but love it. Maybe it's not as impactful as Open Your Heart or Live and Learn, but I think it fits the silly theme of Sonic Heroes. It almost plays out like the opening theme to a Saturday morning cartoon. I think that's the exact vibe that Johnny and June were going for with this song, and I think they nailed it. Also, that drum beat intro at the start is so fucking good. Like, screw it, if you hate this song, then you're fucking boring.
Sonic Heroes, Sonic Heroes, find you, confine you, defying your plans. Sonic Heroes, Sonic Heroes, setting the stage for a hero's progress.
Just like with the adventure games, Sonic Heroes got an official 2-CD soundtrack release called Complete Trinity, which was only released in Japan. It contains just about the entire soundtrack and a few bonus remixes, and I'll be sure to highlight a few of them later. The vocal themes were also released on their own little album, Triple Treat, which included every vocal track from Heroes, and the vocal themes from SA1 for some reason. I think it's a neat bonus, but I do kinda wish they released the instrumental tracks alongside Heroes' vocal themes. You know, like they did with SA2's Cuts Unleashed album. Also, just like with SA2, Sonic Heroes would get a different but official soundtrack release in the US, which greatly cut down the original Complete Trinity soundtrack, and even cut the length of some songs in half. I think this soundtrack CD was also basically reused for that 20th anniversary soundtrack series, and at this moment in time, the 20th anniversary soundtrack is the most recent version of Sonic Heroes music to be made available digitally. It's not a horrible release, but it still excludes a lot of songs from the original Complete Trinity soundtrack. I really hope we get to see Volume 1 and 2 releases for Sonic Heroes' full soundtrack in the future, similar to what they did to the adventure games. That way, the entirety of Heroes music can be available for everyone to listen to. But going back to the instrumental tracks, sadly, none of the vocal tracks in Sonic Heroes had their instrumental tracks released. The most official releases we've ever seen for the instrumental tracks is that during the team battles, they play these shortened, edited version of the theme songs, but for some reason, only Team Sonic's battle theme doesn't have vocals. So they're the only team in this game where we kinda sort of have the instrumental track. Every other team's battle music still has their singers on it. So while it is pretty cool that we kind of sort of have the instrumental track for We Can, it doesn't really contain the full song, which kinda sucks. We don't have the instrumental track for Sonic Heroes, but in the old mobile game Sonic Runners, at one point there was a Sonic Heroes event where Runners would also include a few songs from Heroes, and one of the songs it included was the Sonic Heroes theme song, but it was this new guitar version where it removed Johnny's singing entirely and had a guitar playing in his place. It's not a bad version of the theme, and it's probably the closest we're gonna get to hearing the Sonic Heroes instrumental track. And I guess I'll also quickly mention how there was a Sonic Unleashed event, which gave us a guitar version of Endless Possibility. It sounded pretty neat. Tomoyo Ohtani also made the soundtrack for Sonic Runners, so it was pretty cool to see him revive that theme. But getting back to Sonic Heroes, we've never seen the instrumental tracks for the vocal themes released outside the game. Though in an early prototype build for Sonic Heroes, specifically GameCube Prototype 10.8, it contained a lot of early versions of music from the game, including a full instrumental track for Team Rose's theme song. This is the only team vocal theme to have its full instrumental track available in any way, and it is an early version of the song, so the mixing and everything on it isn't perfect. The drumming's also different too, though it's still a really sick instrumental track and I recommend looking it up. I remember back in 2016, I made a tweet towards the Crush40 Twitter account, which appears to be ran by Jun Sonoe himself, asking if there were any plans to release the instrumental tracks for Heroes. And Jun did actually respond to me, but said that there weren't any plans, to my disappointment. I also remember about 2 years after that, Jun made a post about receiving some CDRs that contain demos for past projects like Sonic Heroes, but judging from the looks of this tweet, he was apparently worried about losing stuff because of disk rot, but didn't really seem to elaborate any further. In this photo he posted back in 2018, it's a CDR that apparently contained the original demos for We Can, but it's been 6 years since this post and we never saw any demos from Sonic Heroes get released. And it should be noted that 2 years later, the official Sonic YouTube channel did post those demos from Adventure 2 in 2020, so I'm guessing they were able to receive these from Jun's CDRs, but again, we have yet to see or hear anything from Sonic Heroes. I hope they were able to recover some demos, and looking back at these old tweets, I wonder if me poking Jun about the instrumentals made him curious to go back looking for them, only to come up short with some of his CDRs rotting away apparently. Jun, if you're watching, I appreciate the effort, and I really hope you guys post more demos in the future. You see, this is why I want stuff like this to be officially released, or at the very least digitally archived online, since it'll just become lost as time goes on. Need I remind you all of that prototype for a Sonic Generations PSP port that someone found, but wasn't able to fully recover everything on it because the only copy we were able to get our hands on suffered from severe disk rot. Yeah, the search for lost media can be heartbreaking shit. With that said, regardless if we hear these demos one day or not, I love Sonic Heroes soundtrack, and I really hope the full thing gets digitally released in the future. Sega, if you're watching, put it on Spotify, please, holy shit. Like, you're not remaking Heroes anytime soon, so at least give us the full soundtrack. Put that shit on Spotify ASAP. let's talk about the levels. Seeing how there were, you know, just 2 level designers in the entire game, the levels can really vary in quality. You see how we have 4 teams to play as? Well, depending on which team you choose, it'll actually change the way the levels play out. Team Sonic is normal mode, so their levels can last a pretty standard amount of time. Team Dark is the hard mode, which extends your time in the levels, along with changing a few sections to be more difficult. Team Rose is the easy mode, with their levels being the shortest out of all the teams. And Team Chaotix is, well, the mission mode, since their levels have you doing certain tasks and whatnot, making the amount of time you spend in each level different. I like the sense of variety that playing as each team can bring, but the game handled this really stupid. Remember how Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 had you play through all the main story modes in order to get to the last story? Well, Sonic Heroes carried this over. So yes, to beat the game, you have to play through all 4 teams. This is a mistake, and I will get into why at the level breakdown. In my original Cooper's Perspective review of this game, I didn't do a level breakdown, mainly because I was rushing to get those reviews out super fast, and while I was making that review, I ran into a bit of writer's block and decided to skip over looking at all the levels and heroes, mainly just not knowing how to describe each level in the game. So in the original review, all I said about the levels was this:
I almost find doing a rundown of each level to be kind of pointless. I've tried several times to do so while writing this review, but I honestly think you should just play the game for yourself to see the levels. It's a cop-out, but I think it's very much worth it.
Yeah, guys, maybe Cooper's Perspective was never really that good. If you have nostalgia for it, I'm sorry.
I'm a crazy person. I made an hour-long review of Sonic Heroes. Jesus Christ.
You ain't seen nothing yet, you skinny bitch. So after 8 years, here's a proper level breakdown for Sonic Heroes. There are 14 levels in the game, and one aspect I really adore is the way Heroes handle the levels. While we have the 14 main ones, every 2 levels we get a boss fight. So the levels are actually paired together, and they can even share certain themes and designs with one another. It's almost like we're running through 7 zones that have 2 acts each. Very similar to the way the classic games handled it. The first pair of levels are Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace, with Seaside Hill being a fantastic starting level for the game. The level designs in Sonic Heroes can contain a lot of the same hallway structures from Sonic Adventure 2, but it also has a few more open areas similar to what SA1 did. So it's almost like they tried to do a fusion of SA1 and SA2's level designs. And with how much hell Azuka and the other game designer were going through to finish this game on time, I think they did a fine enough job, but there are definitely a few issues I'll get to in a bit. A new gimmick introduced for this game are these rainbow rings, which would become a staple for most of the future 3D games. Basically, when you jump into a rainbow ring, your characters can do a cool pose and it'll give you extra points. The rainbow rings can be pretty fun to come across, and I'm glad Sonic Heroes introduced them. I also like how fucked up Omega's pose can look when he goes through it. And whoa, is Shadow dabbing? When it comes to Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace themselves, I don't have too many complaints. I really like how Seaside starts out near the beach, kinda similar to Emerald Coast, but the most obvious comparison to make with this level is how it has checkerboard patterns similar to Green Hill Zone. It really helps add to the idea of this game harping back to the Genesis games. I really like that. Seaside Hill also has these bobsled sections. They're very brief sections that have you controlling this little vehicle where you ram into enemies and item balloons. You ride the bobsled 2 times in Seaside Hill, and it'll make other appearances in the game. For the first level, there's obviously a lot of beach and greenery aesthetics. Though as the level goes on, you'll come across these ruins-looking structures. These take up the majority of Ocean Palace, but other parts of the level that always stuck with me was the section with all the turtles floating around. And then there's the end of the level with these large rocks chasing after you, akin to the boulder in SA1's Lost World, and the gun truck in SA2's City Escape. And I guess also the killer whale in Emerald Coast, which doesn't chase you in Heroes, but they do make a few brief appearances. Also, right near the end of Ocean Palace, when you get to this hallway section with the open ceiling, you can actually fly up there and find some hidden item boxes. It's a really cool bonus area that I had no idea existed. Anthony and David had to show it to me. So thanks, guys. Now stop embarrassing me about how I don't know that much about this game I really like. I gotta say real quick, while I do like the 3D bubble item boxes in the adventure games, I really like their triangular design in Heroes. They look rad as hell. God, I love this game's art style. Getting back to Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace, they're both fun levels, but I will admit, I'm not really the biggest fan of how water is just a bottomless pit now. I know Sonic isn't able to swim, and the adventure games already did the water being bottomless pits too, but why don't we have underwater sections in the game? Like, why are most of these levels just surrounded by this massive kill plane? This is an issue that's gonna last for several games too, so I think I'll just move on. The main enemies in this game are known as the Egg Pawns, goofy little guys that can chase after you and are sometimes seen carrying swords, shields, and even blasters to shoot you. They're a lot of fun to destroy. The other common enemy is known as the Egg flappers? They're airborne enemies that can be defeated by either using the homing attack or the thunder shoot. These aren't the only types of enemies, you come across a lot more as the levels go on, and I'll highlight them when I get to them. Another cool thing about Ocean Palace is that it features this sick ass rainbow. Nice. While Seaside Hill is the first level in the game for every team, there's another level before Seaside Hill that you end up playing through as Team Rose. This level is known as Seagate, and it's just a tutorial level with Omochao talking for like 99% of it, so not the most fun thing. Honestly, the most interesting part of Seagate is how the music is basically an alternate version of the main Seaside Hill music. I actually really like the way it sounds. But yeah, the music for all 3 levels are fantastic. Some of the best tracks in the series. Hell, I think Jun himself would even consider Seaside Hill one of his favorite compositions. And rightfully so, it's great. Okay, I've done enough praising, let's talk about the chaotics. In Seaside Hill, you have to go around collecting 10 hermit crabs, and in Ocean Palace, you have to find a single chow. By the way, the chaotics are told their missions at the start of the level from the high-pitched voice on the walkie-talkie. While I do like that they have a character in the game verbally giving the chaotics their missions, Eggman also never really explains why he needs them to do these missions. Like, what's the point of collecting all the hermit crabs or the chow? Why does he need the chaotics to go do this stuff? I know they're a detective agency, but there has to be some kind of reason why Eggman's making them do all these tasks instead of just going directly to the Egg Fortress and rescuing him there, right? The chow mission in Ocean Palace is especially confusing. You only have to find one chow, and it's at the very end of the level. You might as well just let us reach the goal ring. Like, the chow basically has the same function. But yeah, those were the first 2 chaotics missions. They're both fine, but these are just gonna keep getting worse. One last thing I'll mention about Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace is the original concept art, because holy crap, it just looks incredible. Also amongst the concept art is this sketch for an unused pirate theme level. I'm gonna assume this level got scrapped because of time constraints, but I also think maybe they figured, oh, we're kind of already doing these ocean theme levels, so wouldn't doing a pirate theme level seem a bit redundant? There's also another concept sketch for a scrapped ruins level. Since Seaside Hill and especially Ocean Palace have a lot of ruins in their levels, I'm guessing there's pretty similar reasons why this got scrapped alongside the pirate theme level. Though it should be noted that this ruins level is taking way more influence from Japan, so I guess kind of in a way Dragon Road from Sonic Unleashed would fully realize this concept art, which is pretty cool. One weird detail about Sonic Heroes that I'm also not sure was even intentional, during the results screen when the characters are doing their victory animations, sometimes the camera will just rotate to the side while the characters stare off into nothing. Obviously they're meant to be looking at the camera, which can normally happen, so this might be a small glitch or something, but I do kinda like it if I'm being perfectly honest, and I'm gonna assume Azuka or someone else thought it looked cool too since they left it in the game. Of course, Seaside Hill would be brought back for Sonic Generations as the rep for Sonic Heroes, along with being made part of the second group of levels known as the Dreamcast era? Is that entirely accurate? Heroes was never on Dreamcast. And if you're watching this in the Dreamcast era compilation video, shut up. The Generations remake of Seaside Hill is easily one of the best levels in the game. Not only does this version of the level feel more open-ended, but it even incorporates elements from Ocean Palace too, both in terms of level design and music. Both the classic and modern remixes are fantastic, with Jun himself handling the modern remix. And I love the way he added in this music transition from Seaside Hill to Ocean Palace. It's one of the coolest things ever, it's seriously great. Also, personally, I think the classic remix is pretty underrated. It's not one of my main favorites from Generations, but I thought Richard Jock of Sonic R fame handled this remix pretty good. And for anyone curious with other remixes, there's a unique remix of Ocean Palace and Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, and I think it was handled by Jun too. I don't think it's better than the original song or the Generations remix, but it's still a really fun one for anyone who might be curious. And finally, Seaside Hill would be brought back and made into 3 different race courses for Team Sonic Racing in 2019, which also gave us even more kick-ass remixes done by Jun himself, along with collaborating with whoa, can't talk about them. God, poor Ian. Well, despite that, they're still really fun remixes. The next set of levels are Grand Metropolis and Power Plant, the futuristic city levels that are easily some of my favorite 3D Sonic levels in the franchise. I'm assuming the name for Grand Metropolis was meant to be an intentional callback to Metropolis Zone from Sonic 2, especially since the color green is pretty common in this level. Both these levels have these cool roads that can move you forward automatically. The GameCube version has the graphics on them always moving, making it flow nicely. For some reason, this moving effect isn't on the Xbox or PS2 version, and those versions even use a different texture too. The PC version has the original texture, but the effect was still broken. But you can fix it using mods, which you can clearly see in my gameplay footage. Though, while on the topic of these roads, I should probably talk about the Loop-de-Loops, a returning and memorable set piece that's present in just about every level. In the original Genesis games, they were an obstacle you had to get past by building up enough speed and running around them. But whenever Sonic entered 3D, I'm guessing they couldn't really find a feasible way to transition this into the third dimension, so they just made them scripted sequences where you just hold forward and Sonic will run through them without an issue. Very simple to follow. Aaron. And Sonic Heroes continues using these scripted loop sections, which is fine, but there's a small issue with it here. Actually, there's kinda two. First off, with the speed characters already moving insanely fast, this can make their acceleration during the loops go completely haywire. Like, they can zoom past these sections immensely fast if you just hold forward. This can sometimes glitch out and make you clip through the loop, which can sadly happen from time to time. However, for the console versions, they did try to alleviate this by adding a speed cap on the scripted loops. The speed cap actually does work and can be manageable, but this only applies to the console versions. The PC version, despite coming out 10 months later, for whatever reason they forgot to include the speed caps on the loops. As a result, you are going to see the speed characters run way faster than they were originally meant to. I think I died on loops the most on the PC version, simply because of how fast the speed characters were moving. Also, whenever you exit a loop, you carry that speed with you. So if you're not careful, you'll most likely shoot off the level by accident, or miss a ramp or spring that could have helped you get back on course. It's a bit of a mess, so just be on the lookout whenever you reach these scripted loop sections, especially if you're playing the PC port. But getting back to the Grand Metropolis level itself, both the egg pawns and flappers return, but this level is where we encounter a new turtle enemy that's known as Cameron. Wait, this fucker's name is Cameron? Okay, well, you encounter several Camerons throughout the level, and they can be beaten easily if you just level up your speed and flight characters. If not, just use the power types to kill them. But later on in Power Plant, there is a gold Cameron variant that you can come across, with these versions using their shell as a shield. I'd recommend flipping them over with the tornado attack and killing them afterward, though a fully leveled up speed character can basically one-hit them. While still on the topic of gold Camerons, the Chaotix missions here are ass, and I'd say these are the first 2 missions that really foreshadow how horrible they're gonna get. The mission in Grand Metropolis requires the Chaotix to track down and kill all the enemies in the stage. All 85 of them. And if you miss just one enemy, you'll most likely have to run through the entire level for a while, until you eventually find the egg pawn or flapper that you missed. I think these are the worst kinds of missions where you can't afford to miss anything. Otherwise, you're gonna be stuck in the level for much longer. Missions like these can make the Chaotix levels feel longer than the Team Dark levels. Thankfully for the mission in Power Plant, it's still not fun, but it's less cruel. This one has you hunting down just 3 golden Camerons, so it's not another assload of Batniks you have to go after like in the previous mission. I also like how Eggman calls them golden turtles, but it's like, come on, call them by their official name. Not focusing on the Chaotix, the set piece at the end of Power Plant where Team Dark and Team Sonic have to travel up this section to avoid the lava, it's pretty memorable, but it also made me paranoid to play it when growing up. And pretty interestingly, Team Rose and Chaotix don't travel here. Power Plant also has one of my favorite music tracks in the game. The music in Grand Metropolis sounds great too, but I just think Power Plant's music sounds way better and more intense. And while while I do love Grand Metropolis' music, I greatly prefer the remix of the music in that Mario and Sonic London 2012 game. It might just be my favorite version of the level music. It sounds fantastic and more, well, grand. Almost like a modern version of the level if it was brought back for generations. Before I move on, I did want to ask about something. In Sonic Forces, it would include a level that was plainly called Metropolis, clearly taking its name from the Sonic 2 level, but that level's aesthetic is completely white instead of green, which is a little confusing why it was called Metropolis. But here's my thing, what is this location meant to be? It's not an underground mechanical base like in Sonic 2, it's more of a futuristic city level like Grand Metropolis in Heroes, but they didn't call it Grand Metropolis, and it also doesn't really feature any of the green or blue scenery from the Heroes level. So what exactly is Forces Metropolis level trying to do? Does it want to be a successor to Sonic 2's Metropolis or Sonic Heroes Grand Metropolis? The next two levels are a bit of a mixed bag. Casino Park and Bingo Highway. Obviously they're the casino themed levels, and they both have good and bad aspects to them. The good parts easily come from the graphics. Holy crap, these levels are colorful. Seriously, I'd probably go as far to say these two are the best looking levels in the game. I also love that the egg pawns look unique in these levels. They're so shiny and colorful here. The bad, sadly, comes from the gameplay. Since these are the casino themed levels, they have these huge pinball machine sections that you have to roll through, where you can collect rings, some item boxes, and hop into slot machines to get a jackpot, and you can even roll Eggman spikes, which, just like the previous casino levels, is really annoying. Also, one personal gripe about the slot machine, but you can also roll icons of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. So if you get 3 Sonics or 3 Tails or 3 Knuckles, you get more rings. But personally, I think there should have been a bonus for if you roll Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Like, how come you don't get anything special for getting all 3 of them? They could have called it a Heroes bonus or something. I think that was a missed opportunity. Aside from that, what really kills the gameplay here is the pinball physics. They're not terrible, but a pinball game without proper physics can really make these sections a slog to get through. You can control the characters to move left and right on the pinball tables, but the controls are so tight that it makes turning really difficult. Plus, your character can even fall off the pinball table and lose a life. And in the PC version, it doesn't seem like they got the coding for the pinball table correct because your character can get launched off the damn board. Like one time I just shot up straight in the air. It's insane, and it never happened to me on the console versions. There's also an Easter egg in Casino Park where you can access a VIP room, which could potentially earn you more rings. But getting to the VIP room can be pretty tricky. You gotta get to an upper section on one of the pinball tables, activate a switch, and it'll disable this laser barrier that you can get past. However, if you're playing this on a standard TV, with how zoomed out the camera is, you can barely even see the switch. Team Rose's version of the level ends pretty early, so they're the only team that can't get in the VIP area, while Team Sonic and Dark are the only teams that have to activate this switch. Team Chaotix doesn't need to do that because SBO's tornado attack lets him turn invisible, allowing him to get past the laser barrier. How nice. Casino Park is where the pinball gimmicks mostly take place, but when you get to Bingo Highway, it changes it up by having you roll down these huge tables, while also obviously adding bingo elements, which has you collecting these numbers while rolling around. There's 9 numbers you can pick up, and when you get 3 down on the board, you'll earn a ton of rings. I even managed to get a perfect 9 while recording, so that was pretty neat. Bingo Highway also has the one section where it can shoot you straight up in the air, and then you basically skydive down to collect the numbers. I really like that set piece. Unfortunately, I think the worst part of Bingo Highway is the section at the very end. It has you rolling down this huge table, and the thing is, if you fall off, you die and you have to restart this entire part. One method I usually do before hopping into this section is switch to the speed character and slowly inch your way into the tunnel. That way the other 2 characters don't follow you, which means if you die in this section, it'll switch you back to the previous section as one of the other characters, sparing you a life. So it's kind of a decent way to mediate this issue. All in all, I think Casino Park and Bingo Highway are decent levels, but I don't think the concepts here were really executed the best. In comparison to, say, Casinopolis, it is cool that they at least attempted to do a proper 3D casino level, level, but I just wish aspects like the controls and pinball physics could have been better, and those kill planes during Bingo Highway are obnoxious. For the Chaotix missions, Casino Park has the boys needing to collect 200 rings, which can be a real pain in the ass if you collect over 100 rings or so, but then you get hurt, meaning you lose all the rings you're carrying and you basically have to restart the damn mission. And the Bingo Highway mission has you needing to collect 10 chips, and it is so goddamn boring that the only real amusing part of it, to me at least, was this brief back and forth with Charmy and Vector.
Chips? You mean potato chips?
Not those kind of chips, silly!
But just like the graphics, the music tracks in both these levels are great. Bingo Highway is especially really good, but I'd recommend listening to yet another remix that was made in the Mario and Sonic 2012 London game. Just like with the Grand Metropolis remix, it sounds fantastic and it is easily my favorite version of the level music. I like Casino Park's music too, I just think Bingo Highway has a better song, but here's something interesting. On the game's official soundtrack release, it included 2 different versions of Casino Park's music. We get the version from the final game, and also the original version of the song that June made. I'm not sure why this early version of the song is here, I guess June was just really fond of how it sounded. I still prefer the final version, but the original version's pretty cool too, so I'd recommend listening to it if you're a fan of Casino Park's music. And not to mention, Casino Park was another level brought back for Team Sonic Racing, which also means we got remixes of both Casino Park and Bingo Highway's music, which were done by June and a chiptune artist that goes by the name Torina. These were easily some of the best remixes off TSR, and I remember popping off when I found out June was remixing songs from Heroes. With how underrated I find this soundtrack, I just thought that was fucking awesome. One of the last things I'll mention before moving on is how there's a separate Bingo Highway remix on the official soundtrack release too. It's fine, just not as good as the original level music or the Mario and Sonic remix, but it's there if you guys want to check it out. Also, look at this absolutely gorgeous concept art for Casino Park. I love the pink colors here. It kinda reminds me of the early version of Casino Night from the Sonic 2 beta. Okay, next are the grind rail levels, Rail Canyon and Bullet Station. And I just don't like either of these two. The main issue is how there's a huge bottomless pit throughout the entirety of the levels. And since you're on grind rails for about 90% of the time, if you fuck up and fall off, you die. Damn, if only we could switch to the flying character while in the air. And when it comes to the grind rail controls themselves, they are far more simplified in comparison to how they were in SA2. SA2's grind railing had a very heavy emphasis on leaning on turns and maintaining momentum to keep up your speed. For Sonic Heroes, who gives a shit about momentum? Just keep tapping the B button over and over again. And don't worry about leaning during turns either, cause you'll never really lose speed if you just keep button mashing. Yeah, again, it's way more simplified. Heroes was trying to aim for the more casual gaming market, so maybe dumbing down the grinding mechanics was a good call. That's not to say this method was perfect either, since when it comes to switching grind rails, Sonic Heroes just does what SA2 did, where if you lean and press the jump button, the game will just shoot you to whatever direction you're pointing. And it somehow functions worse. So don't be too surprised if you decide to play these levels and whenever you switch grind rails, you can end up shooting off and right to your death. You know what's more shocking about this? This would end up being another gameplay function that the Shadow the Hedgehog game fixed. Yeah, the fucking Shadow game fixed both remapping the light dash and being able to switch grind rails much smoother. I'm speechless. In more positive aspects, the music in both these levels are still great, and I do really love the aesthetics here. Not to mention, look at this goddamn concept art, holy shit. Plus, I do like these quick sections in Bullet Station where you get launched into a cannon, and then you get shot out into the air, where you can pop item balloons and such. Those parts are pretty fun. But overall, Rail Canyon and Bullet Station are probably my least favorite levels in the game, and I never look forward to replaying them when I revisit Heroes. It can be a little anxiety-inducing being above a bottomless pit for the entire time. Also, the bobsled sections are really not fun, especially when you can't see the laser barriers coming your way, and you end up losing all your characters and dying because of it. But I will say, please track down the PAL GameCube version of Heroes and get it to run using the 60Hz option. These two levels can really highlight just how screwed up the 60Hz mode is on this version. Look at how fast these characters are moving in comparison. It's so fucking funny.
Also, what the fuck is going on with the sound mixing on the PC version? It makes certain background elements in this level really fucking loud.
Here we go!
Well, if I didn't think the levels were bad enough, when looking at the Chaotix missions, for Rail Canyon, the mission on screen says infiltrate the terminal station, i.e., reach the fucking goal ring. Straight up, all you have to do is just reach the goal ring, just like all the other teams. So this is easily the Chaotix's best mission. But for Bullet Station, they get right back to the bullshit by having you track down and destroy 30 of these things. Why? What story reason does Eggman have for making the Chaotix destroy all these capsules?
Capsules developed by Eggman are located throughout the base. Destroy them.
Tell me why you're making us do this! And even though I did talk shit about the bobsled section, for the Chaotix mission, it can actually come in really handy for destroying as many capsules as you can. Bullet Station is also one of the only parts of the game where you can control the flying character on their own, you know, without mods. Mainly because you need to activate 3 switches, so you gotta place the other characters down on each of them. It's a very brief part, but yeah, it's a pretty noteworthy thing I remember about this level.
And yes, I'm fully aware that Rail Canyon and/or Bullet Station are being brought back for the Sonic X Shadow Generations remaster. At the time I post this re-review, we haven't really seen too much of it, but I hope the levels are fun, and I also hope the remixes are good.
The next 2 levels are a bit more favorable for me, which are Frog Forest and Lost Jungle. While I had issues with the last 4 levels, Frog Forest is easily one of my all-time favorite 3D Sonic levels ever. The platforming's fun, I love its sense of speed, and this might be my favorite looking level in the game. Green is my favorite color, so I definitely love the greenery and the giant frogs everywhere. The frogs can be used to cause rain, which can grow platforms for you to progress in the level. This is really cute.
The frogs can also grow these little mushroom platforms, and in a really cute callback, you can bounce on them and they make the exact same sound effect from Mushroom Hill in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That's adorable.
I also love the visual of the vine growing out as you're grinding on it. It's so memorable and cool. And those flower gliding sections where you fly in the air, and that one bit where you can hop off it to get a 1-up, I love it. While the obvious theme for this level is a forest with a bunch of frogs, early concept art for Frog Forest, apart from looking just as gorgeous as the other concept art, also featured dinosaurs? What the hell? The level music for Frog Forest is another one of my favorite songs in the game. Hell, probably the whole franchise. I want to learn guitar so I can learn how to play this. It is beautiful. Lost Jungle is also a solid level, but not as good as Frog Forest in my opinion. Part of the reason why is because of the badniks you can encounter. Lost Jungle is the first level where you can come across these huger looking egg pawns, known as egg hammers. They're giant robots with a huge hammer that they can swing at you. A main attack they can do is spinning their hammer around, and when they stop they start losing balance for a bit, which gives you an opening to use the Thunder Shoot to knock them over, and then defeat them using a power type. They're one of the more difficult enemies to fight, but seeing how this is near the last half of the game, it makes sense that they're here. I will say, the placement of Frog Forest and Lost Jungle is a bit weird. I personally find these levels easier than Rail Canyon and Bullet Station, so I feel like they probably should have swapped these levels. But at the same time, getting through those annoying grind rail levels and being sent to Frog Forest feels like a pretty nice reward. It's kinda like in Sonic 1 when you slog through Labyrinth Zone just to get rewarded with Starlight. Lost Jungle is also home to the Black Frogs, which unlike the regular frogs, their rain can actually cause platforms to disappear. disappear. It's a cool idea, though the character's remarks about the different colored frogs are pretty unintentionally hilarious.
Hey, there's that black frog again.
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 I can't believe this. Those black frogs are bad.
There he is again! That black frog!
But then again, maybe placing Lost Jungle at the end was pretty smart, because this level ends with a pretty insane set piece with this huge alligator. All you have to do is just jump at the right time while hopping to different vines. Don't just button mash like a madman or you'll die instantly. I used to think the inclusion of a realistic alligator was kind of funny seeing how we have Vector, but then I realized Vector's a crocodile while this is very clearly meant to be an alligator. Two completely different animals. In my defense though, unlike these characters, I don't see race.
There's that black frog again.
As much as I adore Frog Forest and everything in it, the absolute worst part of this level is the Chaotix mission. The main reason being the mission here doesn't make any fucking sense. It's a stealth mission where you have to avoid being caught by frogs. Yes, you have to carefully maneuver around every frog in the level, otherwise you have to redo the mission. This is pretty monotonous on its own, but when you get to Lost Jungle, the mission here involves finding 10 Chow in the level. When I first played this mission, I initially thought I still had to avoid the frogs since they're also in this level, but no! You can interact with the frogs here just fine, and even need to use them to spawn certain platforms like before. So why can't the Chaotix interact with them in Frog Forest, but they're just fine in Lost Jungle? What's the issue? Plus, I think the Chaotix Lost Jungle mission was sort of trying to explain why Team Rose suddenly attacks them, since they were collecting Chow and Team Rose were also trying to find Chocola Chow. I guess maybe they assumed that Team Chaotix also took Chocola while they were on their mission?
Now hand over that Chow nice and easy.
I bet you're the ones who took Chocolate Chow.
What?
It's not nice to tease my friends.
The pacing in this cutscene is still dog shit and terrible, but at least the game kind of tried explaining why they're fighting. Sort of. No, it still doesn't make sense.
I also forgot to highlight this, but what the hell is going on with Vector's voice in this cutscene? It's almost like Mark forgot what Vector sounded like.
Excuse me, miss. I was wondering if I could ask you something.
If it's about a date, it'll have to wait.
Date? You think this is a joke, you little brat?
Okay, getting back to positives, there's one really cute detail I love about how Lost Jungle ends for Team Sonic and Team Dark. For Team Sonic, their goal ring is surrounded by frogs, so it'll be raining during their results screen. And for Team Dark, there's black frogs surrounding the goal ring, meaning the darker rain's gonna happen during their results screen. I always love that detail, it's so cute. There's also a secret spot in Lost Jungle, where if you hop up this platform, you come across a frog and 2 flapper enemies. The frog makes it rain, which grows this mushroom, which sends you up to a vine, and also grows a branch out so you can get a 1-up. It's a pretty cool secret shortcut that I always use. No, I don't. I had no clue this part of the game existed until, again, Anthony showed me. Damn it! One last thing I'll mention before moving on. One funny thing I like doing is switching to the flight character and just have them zoom through the scripted speed sections. It looks so ridiculous, but I love it. The next 2 levels are another pair that I feel mixed on. They're the Haunted Mansion levels pretty much, Hang Castle and Mystic Mansion. Out of the 2, I think Hang Castle is a little better. This one has a fun gimmick where you can activate these switches and flip the entire stage upside down. Considering the past few times Heroes kind of fumbled cool ideas, it's nice that Hang Castle executed this pretty well. These 2 levels are also home to these witch-looking egg pawns, known as the Egg Bishop. Their designs look cool, but I recommend killing them first out of every other egg pawn since they can actually refill the other enemy's health bars. And there's another version of them known as the Egg Magicians, who can use an attack that can actually drain your rings if you get in close range of them. So these guys are a little more irritating to deal with. Hang Castle is also home to the only music track in the game composed by Tomoyo Otani, the future sound director of the franchise who also did a few songs in SA2. He actually did compose the instrumental track for Pumpkin Hill, so having him handle one of the Halloween themed levels in Heroes is pretty fitting. His music track is brilliant, and I love how it changes based on if the level's upside down or not. probably my favorite bit in Hang Castle is when you come across this area where you can see this Eggman statue in the background, but after you flip the level over, the statue becomes Metal Sonic. That's an amazing piece of foreshadowing on who the true villain is. So while I think Hang Castle is a pretty solid time, when it comes to Mystic Mansion, I don't know how to feel about this one. I think the level starts out just fine, but then it drags on a little too long, especially as Team Dark. The only time I didn't have an issue with how long this level was when I was playing as Team Rose. You know, since their version is shorter. The level also has some serious issues. One of the worst being the bobsled section, where you have to avoid all sorts of oncoming obstacles like the pumpkin heads and lasers. So if you're not paying attention, it's gonna cost you a lot of lives. The Egg Hammer Batnik is also back, but Mystic Mansion introduces this new armored version, known as Heavy Egg Hammers, where you can't really harm them normally. You have to remove the helmet they're wearing by knocking them over, leaving their head as the only opening to attack. I hate this version of the enemy. It takes way too long to kill them, and I've died so many times from this asshole. I almost always use the Thundershoot glitch to get past him, but what is probably the most infamous part of the level is when you're playing as Team Sonic. The ending of the level has you needing to activate these 3 switches to get to the goal ring, but when you activate the switch for the speed character, as Team Sonic, you're treated to a section where you have to homing attack on several pumpkin heads above a bottomless pit, and the big issue here is that the hitboxes on these pumpkin heads can be really inconsistent, so you can easily get screwed over here and lose a life, having to redo the entire section. It's only Team Sonic that has to do this. Team Rose never goes here, Team Chaotix has their own different mess that I'll get to, and Team Dark, in my opinion, has a slightly easier time. This part fucking sucks. Overall, I think Mystic Mansion is just a mixed bag. It really could have benefited from being shorter and also could have done without these annoying design choices. The best part about the level is easily the music. While it doesn't do what Hang Castle did where 2 different songs are played when you flip over the stage, the track itself is still really kick-ass and it's definitely one of Jun Sonoi's best songs in the game. Also, here's one weird thing I noticed after playing all 4 versions. The start of Hang Castle includes a quick cutscene, but the sound mixing sounds pretty awful on the non-GameCube versions. The flames in the background don't appear to be part of a designated sound channel, so they're just blaring really loud in just about every version of the game, especially on PC. What the hell happened? The GameCube version sounds fine.
Sonic, you sure this is the right way?
I saw Shadow and Eggman head this way. This has gotta be the right way.
But it's so spooky here! Sonic, you sure this is the right way?
I saw Shadow and Eggman head this way. This has gotta be the right way.
But it's so spooky here!
When it comes to the Chaotix missions, fuck me, these are the worst ones. Hang Castle has you needing to collect 10 keys, and just like the other missions where if you miss just one of these collectibles, you're most likely gonna have to run through the entire level multiple times until you find all the keys. However, the mission in Mystic Mansion is easily the worst Chaotix level in the entire game. This level has you needing to put out 60 flames. 60! And more specifically, they have to be red flames, not the blue ones, even though the stage sorta taunts you by placing these blue flames at certain parts of the level, even though they don't count if you put them out. And some of the red flames can be hidden too, which is really fun. How is this worse than the 85 Batniks in Grand Metropolis? This is fucking tedious and boring. Mystic Mansion was already pretty mixed for me, but this mission easily makes it one of the most irritating Sonic levels I've ever played in my life. There is no way Azuka or anyone who tested this game thought this mission would be fun to play, let alone replay! After this re-review, I never want to touch this mission ever again. But if I could try to give one final positive to Mystic Mansion, the rotating graphics in the final area look freaky, but cool. I think the effect looks the best on GameCube, but on Xbox it looks a bit broken, and the PS2 version just uses this flat JPEG rotating around. It's pretty cheap looking. I think it was broken on PC too, but a modder fixed it. It looks way more trippy in HD. Next are the last 2 levels in the game, Egg Fleet and Final Fortress. Egg Fleet is another one of my all-time favorite 3D Sonic levels, and it's probably the one level where I don't mind being surrounded by a huge bottomless pit. This is mainly because that's the whole point of the level. You're high up in the air, going super fast and platforming to reach the goal. The opening cutscene for Team Sonic is also just one of my most favorite things ever. I love Ryan Drummond's delivery here.
Alright, Eggman, let's get this party started.
Just overall, the level itself is a lot of fun. And to me, I always loved this level because it felt like a 3D version of Flying Battery in a way, especially since it has you traveling across Eggman's airships. It's the same basic gimmick. There's just so much adrenaline I get from playing this level. The music is especially pretty kick-ass and really fits the action-packed platforming perfectly. Egg Fleet also has that one bit where you're supposed to use the Rocket XL to get past this one section, which will launch you straight in the air, but since the speed characters move insanely fast in this game, you don't really need to use the Rocket XL here. You can just hold up. It's literally the most useless move ever. When it comes to the final level, Final Fortress, it's not bad. I greatly prefer Egg Fleet, but I think Final Fortress gets the job done. I love the dark and stormy weather. The lightning effects really make it one of the best looking levels in the game. Plus, I just love how the level opens with Team Sonic jumping into a JPEG of the Final Fortress ship. I just think that's pretty funny. With that said, there are irritating parts. The worst parts of Final Fortress easily have to be the egg hammers, or more so the heavy egg hammers. They can seriously halt your progress unless, again, you're spamming the Thundershoot glitch. One other annoying Batnik you can encounter in both these levels is known as E2000, who have really rad designs, but they can be super obnoxious to deal with, especially since they have shields they can keep putting up. The red ones can be beat a little faster, but in Final Fortress you encounter a gold variant, the E2000R. These ones are tougher to deal with since they almost always have their guard up. Not to mention, both E2000s can shoot these massive lasers at you. I would recommend using the tornado attack to stun them. Also, fun fact, Cream and Cheese can one-hit kill the E2000s, which you'll never get to see or experience unless you install mods. One other annoying thing in Final Fortress are the grind rail sections. The first few are fine, but the ones that really cause issues are the final few, where you have to jump to different rails multiple times just so you can dodge these massive fuck you lasers being shot at you. And if you die, it's a pretty long way back. It's easily one of the more difficult parts of the entire game. Focusing on more positive things, I know some people can find the characters talking in game all the time to be exhausting, but I actually do appreciate when the characters are saying things that help build continuity. This happens in both Team Sonic and Team Rose's stories since they end up mentioning the egg carrier and other things.
This weather reminds me of our last attack on the egg carrier. You've been in battle before? What? You too, Mr. Big?
Doggy!
The last two Chaotix missions are thankfully not awful, but they're still kinda tedious. The Egg Fleet missions involves you needing to sneak past Eggman's enemies undetected, which you can do pretty decently using Espio's invincibility. It's not a horrible mission, it just takes a while. The last mission involves the Chaotix tracking down 5 keys. That way they can enter Eggman's base. That's it. It's not too terrible, and I'll gladly take this mission over the one in Mystic Mansion any day. Also, yeah, the Batniks can detect you here just fine, but not in Egg Fleet, but whatever, who cares at this point. So for the final stages in the game, Egg Fleet is a ton of fun, and Final Fortress is decent. But I will say, both these levels are probably the main two where I think the concept art showed a lot more interesting ideas. The concept art for Egg Fleet actually looks a bit closer to how Final Fortress turned out, which is pretty interesting. Not only that, but when looking at the concept art for Final Fortress, the level was originally depicted as being an underwater base. First off, good lord, this looks absolutely stunning. Second, could you imagine if they went through with this idea? I personally kinda wish they stuck with Final Fortress being an underwater base level. It actually would have wrapped up the game pretty well. Throughout the levels, there's a lot of fish-themed designs and areas you can discover. Not to mention, several of Eggman's flying airships bear striking resemblances to fish. So I think that theme was purposeful and really would have tied up the game nicely with Final Fortress being an underwater level. It's such a missed opportunity, but I'm guessing they had to ditch this concept due to time constraints, and maybe them just not figuring out how to translate this into a proper playable level. Of course, the underwater base concept will be made a reality in Sonic Advance 3's Ocean Base, and Sonic 06's Aquatic Base. Though less said about the latter, the better. But still, an underwater Final Fortress. What could have been. At the end of every second act, the game has you go through a boss fight with either Eggman or a different team. The team battles, which are kinda similar to the character battles in SA2, are bad. I guess the goal here was to switch between characters and attack the other team, until you eventually knock them off the battle arena. However, the combat is so bare bones that it feels like it takes way too long to defeat the other team. That is, until you discover you can just keep spamming the tornado attack as the speed character, and it'll basically end the team fights in seconds. There's absolutely no point to just fight the teams normally, normally. Just keep spamming the tornado move over and over again. Also, during the fights, what the hell is that noise Cream makes? Did Sarah Wolfwick turn into a dolphin for a second? Okay, moving on to the Eggman boss fights, they fare a bit better. Eggman has 3 different fights, with the first one being the Egg Hawk. For this, you just chase Eggman down, and then hit him several times until the Egg Hawk starts exploding. For the first boss fight, it's not too bad. The next Eggman boss occurs after Bingo Highway, and it's not really a boss fight. It's more about destroying all of Eggman's badniks that he sends after you. And you fight bosses like this 2 times, with Bingo Highways being called Robot Carnival, and the second swarm of enemies is after Mystic Mansion with the Robot Storm. While the Robot Carnival can be a bit dull, the Robot Storm is just awful. The main issue here is that unlike the Robot Carnival, you can get knocked off the platform you're fighting on. So if you're having a hard time beating this fight but you end up falling off because of an enemy hitting you, well, you gotta restart the entire enemy swarm. Doesn't matter if you're several minutes into the fight, there are no checkpoints. It's annoying, stupid, and somehow, Team Dark's Robot Storm isn't the worst one. That goes to Team Chaotix. Mainly because in their fight, there's a section that involves you needing to shoot yourself out of a cannon to a bunch of Eggman robots in the background. So you're gonna be aiming and shooting for a while. Not just that, but even after you destroy all the enemies, you can potentially get stuck in a really annoying loop where your character will be sent back, only to get sucked right back into the cannon over and over again. It's the worst thing ever. I would greatly recommend using the Thundershoot glitch as often as you can, because it will really help you speed through these lengthy enemy swarms. Looking at the other normal Eggman fights, after Bullet Station you fight the Egg Albatross. It's basically the Egg Hawk but with extra layers since it's now attached to a battleship and a blimp. This boss can take forever, and it's made even worse with how every team needs to fight this damn thing. Again, just keep spamming the Thundershoot glitch if you want to plow through the boss fight faster. Yes, that's cheating, but most of the boss fights aren't fun, so who cares? When it comes to the last Eggman fight, being the Egg Emperor, this one is fine. You just gotta chase down Eggman again, and defeat him mainly using the Thundershoot move. He does have a shield, but if you level up your flight character enough, it won't really be too much of an obstacle. For a quote-unquote final boss fight, or at least the last fight for the main stories, it's not the worst thing ever, it's just kind of okay. I gotta say, Dean Bristol's voice clips during this boss fight are really entertaining. It just sounds like he was having a blast recording these battle cries as Eggman.
Charge! I won't go down that easy! Defeated? Impossible! No!
Also, while I was recording the Chaotix on the Xbox version, the game suddenly crashed.
Here we go!
That was a little strange. One other thing I'll say, the boss music here is pretty great like before, but I swear part of it was lifted from Green Hill Zone. Does anyone else hear it? Was that intentional? That's bugged me for years. I never got an answer to this. Oh, the Egg Emperor was also brought back for Sonic Generations 3DS. Okay, that's neat. A little random, but that's cool. The remix was pretty nice too. In fact, that remix was the first time I kinda discovered the Green Hill similarities. But not too much else to really say about this. So after you beat all 4 team stories, you're prompted to collect all the Chaos Emeralds. Otherwise, you won't be able to play the last story to finish the game. How do you collect the Chaos Emeralds? Well, this game goes back to using the special stages method that the classic games did, which is neat in concept. To get to the special stages, in the levels you're gonna find these golden keys in cages, which you can break open using the power type. However, you have to collect the keys in the even numbered levels to access the Emerald challenges, and you have to finish the level without getting hit, because getting hit will make you lose the key. There are usually multiple keys in the level you can pick up, but I'd highly recommend getting a shield since it'll actually help you keep the key if you get hit, or just get all the emeralds as Team Rose since their levels are the shortest and have less obstacles in them that won't lead to you getting hit. Collecting the keys is kinda similar to how you need to pick up a Chao key in SA2, except getting hurt and even dying in SA2 let you hold on to a key. I should also get this out the way, but the Chao Garden was not brought back. The Chao are still prominent in the game thanks to Cheese, Chocoa Chao, Chow, the various Chow missions, and in the bonus challenges. Yes, bonus challenges. As I said, only the even-numbered levels let you do an Emerald challenge, but collecting a key and beating an odd-numbered level lets you play a separate bonus challenge. The bonus challenges are fun, but they're not really the ones you should be going after.
This is also the one part of the game where you can see the Dark Chow, as a regular Chow drops a spear for you to collect, while the Dark Chow drops a spike bomb that can hurt you. These bonus challenges are mainly for points and extra lives. Decent fun, but again, they're not the main ones you should be going after. Moving to the Emerald challenges, the special stages in Sonic Heroes are, pretty controversial amongst most fans. By the looks of it, they basically took the half pipe from Sonic 2 and made it a full circle. Though, instead of collecting a certain number of rings and laps, all you really gotta do is just chase down the Chaos Emeralds and you'll collect them. So these stages are pretty simple. On paper. In practice, these levels can be fucking awful. The main issue here are the controls. It's really slippery, especially when you're moving super fast. The special stages give you a boost meter, probably the first time a 3D Sonic game gave you a boost, and you can add more to your boost by collecting these colorful spears. There's even certain spears with stars on them that can add even more to your meter. You can use the boost by holding B, not mashing B like a lot of fans do. I know, the button is pulsating, but all you really need to do is just hold the button. But even with the boost, these stages can be a complete pain to get through. It is way too sensitive when you're trying to move left and right, which can make it really easy to get smacked by spike bombs, or your character getting stuck on these shifting turns in some of the later stages. It is such a messy special stage that I usually just fill up the boost meter, and then just boost on the damn ceiling, hoping the characters will eventually reach the emerald. It even seems like the developers must have realized these weren't great either, because before you reach the very end of these courses, they'll randomly give you these huge lines of star spears to max out your boost, and then give you this huge chance to just shoot down straight to the emerald. Oh yeah, there's a fucking time limit! Why? The special stages are already challenging enough, why did you add a time limit? Were you purposely trying to ruin this? I love Sonic Heroes a lot, but it is far from being a perfect video game, and stuff like the special stages really hold it back. I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse, but these are fucking terrible. I would actually prefer playing the original half-pipe stages in Sonic 2. Again, it's easily one of the weakest aspects of Sonic Heroes. The best part is easily the music. Hell, both the bonus and Emerald challenges have different music, and they both sound good. The Emerald challenge music is honestly one of my favorite special stage themes in the entire series. So while the stages themselves really stink, the music is full of energy and I love it. Hell, the Complete Trinity soundtrack included an extended version of the theme too. It's another remix I recommend listening to because it sounds fantastic. These special stages were also weirdly brought back for Sonic Generations 3DS, acting as that game's special stages, which sounds like a terrible idea at first, but the controls here are way better, so you don't have to deal with shitty, slippery controls like in Sonic Heroes. And what a shock, the better movement makes these levels more enjoyable. Cash Cash also did a decent remix of the music, but for some reason, they remixed the bonus challenge music instead of the Emerald challenge music. Don't get me wrong, the remix still sounds good, but I do wonder if Cash Cash maybe just made a mistake and remixed the wrong song. But I also would have kind of liked to hear what their interpretation of the Emerald Challenge music would have sounded like, so it's a bit of a missed opportunity. But getting back to the original special stages, apart from the music, I guess another positive I'll give these stages are the graphics. I love how the pipelines are see-through, and the backgrounds can be extremely colorful and cool. I also love the 3D spears you can pick up, not just because they feel great to collect, but they do kind of remind me of the blue spears from Sonic 3. And with how much Heroes is paying homage to the Genesis games, maybe that was intentional. So, once you get through the hell of collecting all the Chaos Emeralds, there's another aspect in the game you have to get over which really stinks. It is probably the stupidest design choice in this entire game. Not only do you have to complete these horrible special stages, but you also have to make sure you play through every team story, which requires you to play through Sonic Heroes a full 4 times. The adventure games also had you do something like this, but at least Adventure 1 reduced the amount of levels between certain characters, and Adventure 2 kind of fixed this by having
both stories contain different levels, but Heroes does this probably the worst. While each team does provide slightly different changes to the levels to help differentiate them from each other, the levels themselves can still take forever to get through again and again, with the obvious exception of Team Rose. Whose idea was this? Like, was it all Takashi Iizuka's fault? Well, seeing how Shadow the Hedgehog would later up the ante by making you play through that game 10 fucking times just to access the last story? Yeah, I'm guessing this was completely his decision in Heroes. This was just not a good idea, and it's one of the main issues with Sonic Heroes that people who hate this game always bring up. I wish the requirement was just simplified to beating at least one team. Why do we have to play through all 4 teams? So you have no choice but to play the Chaotix missions, and instead of just sticking to Team Rose, which is for beginner players, you still have to play through Team Sonic and Dark, which are both of much higher difficulties. This feels confused, like this decision wasn't thought out very well. Obviously, I think the Shadow game did it way worse, but Heroes seriously loses points for doing this. But you've already heard about this aspect of the game being bad a million times, so I'll just move on to the last story. This is where it's revealed, quote unquote, that Metal Sonic was the true villain, and after he takes 12 years to transform, we finally get to battle him in 2 phases. The first phase is known as Metal Madness, which has you playing as teams Rose, Chaotix, and Dark in that order. The main hit points on Metal Sonic are these huge buttons. The buttons can change color based on which character type is unable to harm Metal Sonic. Metal Madness can also send several attacks at you, like finger missiles that can freeze one of your characters in what looks like a 32x spear. He also swings his tail at you and can even shoot a flamethrower attack. If you die, you have to redo that particular section, and thankfully there are checkpoints between the teams, so if you made it to Team Dark but ended up dying, you'll just have to redo Team Dark, not restart all the way with Rose. Metal Madness is a decent first phase, if a bit repetitive since you're just doing the same stuff over and over again. The music here is fantastic. It's a really ominous and intense orchestral piece. It fits really well for the first phase of the final boss. I also love how this boss fight takes place in the dark, stormy weather. It's the perfect atmosphere. But if there is one aspect about this boss fight that always made me laugh, it's that, remember how all the character models look ridiculously shiny? And seeing how Metal Sonic is made of, well, metal, so wouldn't it make sense for his character model to be shiny too? However, on the GameCube and PS2 versions, he's just flat blue with no shine to it. But the Xbox version does have a reflective effect on his model, and it actually looks nice. The PC version also had the shiny effect, though they really overdid it here. I'm guessing this is another effect on the port that got broken, though there is a mod to fix this, and it makes Metal Sonic look closer to the Xbox version. So yeah, I think Metal Madness looks the best on Xbox. Once you defeat Metal Madness, he'll transform into his final form, Metal Overlord. It's basically Metal Madness, but now he has wings! So Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles use the emeralds to go super, or more so Sonic goes super while Tails and Knuckles get these super shields. This leads us to the true final boss of the game, where you're fighting Metal Overlord in the sky, and all you really need to do is just build up 5 Team Blasts to defeat him. Throughout the fight, Metal Overlord is sending multiple different attacks at you, like this crystal attack that you need a rocket excel into. Oh wow, the move is finally useful. There's also a few rare points where he'll dip below the clouds, and he comes back carrying one of Eggman's airships that he tosses at you. He also has a different form of the missile move from the last phase, which can freeze all your characters if you're not careful. Yes, this simple missile attack can freeze a super form, which is insane. How fucking powerful are his fingers? For the true final boss, Metal Overlord might be one of my favorite final fights in the series. It is genuinely a lot of fun to play as a super form here. You do have to worry about your ring count, but thankfully there are a decent amount of ring balloons nearby, so don't fret. And this should already be obvious, but yes, this is the only part of the game where you can play as a super form. That's to be expected in this era of 3D Sonic, but personally, I think Sonic Heroes really missed a big opportunity here. The design philosophy behind this game since conception was that it was trying to pay homage to the Genesis games, and starting with Sonic 2 and 3, those games let you play as a super form in regular levels. I really wish Sonic Heroes gave you the ability to do that after you beat the game, especially since it had special stages, which are a bitch to get through, so why not reward us by letting us play as a super form in regular levels? Even if it was just Sonic as a super form and every other character got super shields, I would have been fine with that. Or who knows, maybe a fan will make a mod for the PC version that fully realizes this idea. But getting back to the Metal Overlord boss fight, one of the main reasons why this is one of my favorite final bosses in the franchise has to be because of the music. Where Metal Madness had this epic orchestral track, Metal Overlord has a vocal theme, which was done by Crush 40. The song is called What I'm Made Of, and it is a kick-ass vocal track. It's pretty sweet that we got 2 separate Crush 40 songs just for Sonic Heroes, and both songs fit perfectly in their parts of the game. Sonic even makes a cheeky reference to the song with this cute line.
Man, he's tough!
Is he invincible?
It's not over yet! Let's show him what we're made of!
I love that. What I'm Made Of is not only in my top 5 Crush 40 songs, but, and this might be a huge hot take, I think this song is better than Live and Learn. I love Live and Learn, it's iconic and great and perfect for SA2, but I just prefer how much more energetic What I'm Made Of is, and it's an excellent final boss theme too, a very worthy successor to Live and Learn. Johnny Gioeli's vocals are incredible, and June's guitar solos are fucking excellent as always, and it might just be my favorite vocal theme in the entire game.
Trying to reach inside of me, trying to drain my energy. Let me show you just what I'm made of. Simple curiosity, trying to take a bite of me. Let me show you just what I'm made of now.
The only downside I have about the song is, how the fuck is it not in Smash Brothers? Seriously, this is like the perfect song for that game. They have Sonic Boom, Open Your Heart, Live and Learn, the Sonic Heroes theme song, fucking Supersonic Racing, Escape from the City, the E3 version of His World, and even Fist Bump, but not What I'm Made Of? How? Fuck you, Sakurai, you piece of shit Sonic hater. Wait, Night of the Wind is there? Okay, I take back what I said, this sort of makes up for it. But at the same time, where's With Me? That was also a great final boss theme. Sakurai, you idiot! Metal Overlord is a great final boss, and What I'm Made Of is easily one of Crush 40's best songs. I also really love the sign-off that Team Sonic does when you finally defeat Metal Sonic once and for all.
Yeah! We did it!
Phew, that was pretty tough. Too bad it's all over. For you!
Why'd he say that like a bully? I always loved Sonic Heroes' closing cutscene, and it's also the only part of the game where we finally get to see Metal Sonic in his regular form, outside of his Neo Metal Sonic form. By the way, that's Ryan Drummond voicing Metal, which is fitting since, you know, he's Sonic. And to this day, this is the only game in the series where Metal Sonic had a speaking role, not to mention, he drops the infamous "It's no use" line, and this was 3 whole years before Silver the Hedgehog existed.
It's no use. But why can't I defeat you?
Yeah, eat shit, Sonic 06.
Because we're Sonic Heroes.
What the hell does Sonic mean by that? Wait, why are they referring to themselves as Sonic Heroes throughout the game? What was their sudden interest in deciding to do that? But for the last cutscene itself, it's pretty brief, but to me, it always felt like a very touching send-off to the original Adventure era voice cast. It's one of the last times we'll ever get to hear these guys voice the characters, and I'll always cherish it. Also, that piano piece playing in the background, titled Event Finale, Adventure Must Go On, mwah, beautiful, cherry on top. Thank you for that, June.
Anytime you want a rematch, just let me know. I'll be waiting.
Hey, Sonic, wait up! Sorry to leave like this, but I can't let my Sonic get away!
Sonic sure has his hands full.
I guess I'm out of here too. I think I'll go hunt for someone else's tree.
She never gives up, does she? Oh, no, you don't. Wait!
Guess that's it for this case.
Guess so.
But what about our money?
Man, I almost forgot. That slime ball!
When it comes to extra content, there's obviously the multiplayer mode, which kinda had a lot to live up to considering how great SA2's multiplayer was. Heroes multiplayer is still pretty fun, but it really does pale in comparison. One minor gripe is that you have to unlock all the multiplayer modes by collecting the Emblems? They function the exact same. It's just a little annoying that we have to get more emblems just to play all the multiplayer modes, which I didn't bother doing. I just downloaded a 100% save file off GameFAQs. That was the only way I was able to record record footage of every mode. So thank you to the person who uploaded that save file to GameFAQs, and to my best friend Anthony for helping me to record all the multiplayer footage, just like he helped with SA2. There are 7 multiplayer modes in Sonic Heroes. First there's the Action Race, which lets you race on 3 of the main 14 stages: Seaside Hill, Grand Metropolis, and Bingo Highway. They're cut down versions of the stages too, so it's really not designed similar to how SA2 handled it. The next mode is Battle, which lets you fight one another on the little battle arenas, so have fun spamming the tornado move against each other. You also might have noticed, this is the only part in multiplayer that runs at 60 frames, since it doesn't use a split screen. Every other mode runs in 30 across all versions, but there is a simple fix you can do on the PC version to get it to run at 60, if you were curious. Moving on to the other multiplayer modes, the third mode lets you race in the special stages, which I feel a little mixed on since I don't really enjoy playing these stages on my own, let alone forcing another friend to play them with me. The fourth mode is Ring Race, where you just gotta collect the most rings before time runs out, so the game mainly has you play the casino levels. Pretty fitting, and it's kinda fun, but I will say, the music track in this mode is really short, but it's personally one of my favorite songs in the game. It's really rockin'. The fifth mode is Bobsled Race, where you get to race each other in the bobsleds. It's decent. Really not as good as the kart race mode in SA2 though. Next is Quick Race, which is probably the least interesting mode in multiplayer. You just race each other on really short sections taken from 3 levels. It's kinda boring. Really, the most interesting part of this mode is the music. It's another short track like with Ring Race, but what's pretty cool about the song is that it actually contains a brief remix of Balloon Park from Sonic 3. And this was 8 whole years before June made that kick-ass remix in Generations 2, so it's almost like a neat precursor to that. The final mode in multiplayer is Expert Race, which is similar to Action Race, but now you get 3 more levels: Rail Canyon, Frog Forest, and Egg Fleet. Anthony and I only played through Egg Fleet, so I think this was probably a sign that the two of us were just getting sick of playing the game's multiplayer. I am kinda sad we didn't race in Frog Forest, but Anthony did show off the cool metal skin that the characters can use, so that was nice of him. Thanks bro, these alternate skins look sick. All in all, Heroes multiplayer is a good time, but it almost feels like a last resort for you to go to if you're maybe at a sleepover and none of your friends brought over SA2 Battle. I also just hate the split screen. It's so shitty and squashed looking. If Sonic Heroes ever gets a proper HD port, I think the wider resolution and frame rate boost would really do the multiplayer wonders. Looking at other extra stuff, Sonic Heroes has their own version of Emblems, probably the last main game in the series to use this concept, not counting the medals in Sonic 06. In total, there are 120 emblems in Sonic Heroes, 60 less than SA2, and 10 less than SA1. You can earn emblems by beating the levels normally, but there's also a challenge mode, which gives you more missions to do, which in turn gets you more emblems. The extra missions usually involve just beating the level in a certain amount of time for Team Sonic, defeating a certain number of enemies for Team Dark. Wait a fucking minute. This is literally the Chaotix mode. Seriously, you're killing a certain number of enemies, Team Rose has you collecting 200 rings over and over, and Chaotix is just their regular missions, but with just another dumb detail added to them like, oh, collect 10 more Hermit Crabs instead of what you got before, or defeat all the enemies again, but now you're under a time limit, and even other pointless shit like how in Power Plant, instead of destroying 3 golden Camerons, now you have to destroy 5. Wow. Great missions, guys. And even more of a reason why Team Chaotix's story should have been optional and not mandatory to finish the game. Now, I've collected every emblem in both adventure games multiple times, and across multiple versions of those games too, but I have yet to collect all the emblems in Sonic Heroes. Like, I love this game, but not that much. The game also already makes you play through every level 4 times, so doing that mixed with needing to play these missions in every level with every team again? No, I don't think I will. At least not now. This re-review's taken long enough to get finished. But I think this would also require getting A ranks in every level and mission too. The ranking system in Sonic Heroes kinda gives me the most whatever feeling. Like, when I play SA2, or any other game with a ranking system, I get a B or something and I always feel like, oh man, I should try again, I could probably do better. But when I play Heroes, if I get something like a C, I just don't give a shit. Like, it really doesn't affect me that much. The levels are also way too long for me to justify restarting them, so maybe that's part of the reason why I don't care. Seriously, if you're one of those fans who plays this game, dies on a level, and goes, "Aw man, I died, I better restart so I can get the A rank," as in you are resetting about 6 to 7 minutes of progress just for a stupid A rank, you're gonna spend like 30 minutes in one level. If you do this, you're a fucking psycho. Someone also left a comment on my SA2 re-review, which addressed the misconception about the ranking system, which myself and a lot of other people in the community have had for years. According to user Archie7896, getting hit and losing rings doesn't really affect your rank at the end. That's the way it actually was in SA2, and this got carried over to Sonic Heroes. So back when I said one of the only ways to get an A rank is by making sure you don't get hit, turns out that doesn't really matter. Just, you know, don't die. Along with making sure you still pick up items and destroy enemies, which does make a difference to your ranking since it builds up points. Losing rings doesn't lose points either, so I guess me and most of the fandom just made a mistake. I'll blame Johnny for that. Yeah, fuck it, let's blame Johnny. What the fuck, Johnny? How dare you spread misinformation about this stupid children's video game? And thank you, Archie7896, for pointing this out. Now please keep being a good sport and don't get cancelled horribly in the future so this part of the video doesn't age horribly. While I didn't 100% the game myself, I did at least want to show off what happens when you get every emblem. So not only did I get a 100% save file off GameFAQs for the GameCube version, but I also found a 100% save file for the PC version too. Actually, I think the save file was provided to the community by fellow Sonic content creator, Premi Deremi. That was pretty cool of him to share this. And last I checked, I'm pretty sure Heroes is his favorite Sonic game. So Prem, if you're watching, especially this far into the review, thank you for doing this public service so fans like me didn't have to. So what's the reward for getting all the emblems? Well, it's not a bonus level or a character skin. Instead, it's a new mode, Super Hard Mode, where the game has you play through all 14 levels again as Team Sonic, but now with level layouts and gimmicks being rearranged, and most of the enemies are harder. Yeah. It's a fine challenge. I don't really have a whole lot to say here, but it's not a terrible mode. You can also quit and resume the levels during this mode, which is nice. However, the moment you get a game over, then you gotta start all over at Seaside Hill again, which sounds pretty unfair, but it's Super Hard Mode. What were you expecting? Continues? Do you get a reward for finishing Super Hard Mode? I mean, you get a screen at the end thanking you for playing the game. That's it. You're not ranked or anything either, mainly since at this point in the game, the rankings don't really matter anymore. But that was Super Hard Mode, I guess. Not the best reward ever, but it's better than nothing. And that was Sonic fucking Heroes. Do you really want me to keep going on with this game? Knowing how horrendous the game production was, it's become pretty painfully obvious to me just how rushed and uneven this game is. But despite its flaws, like forcing you to play the game 4 times, those horrible special stages, and certain gameplay elements that could have been executed better, for fans like me, Sonic Heroes is genuinely charming to revisit. The art direction is fantastic, the soundtrack is great, the cutscenes have very weird pacing but are still very entertaining, the adventure era voice casts are honestly at their best here, the multiplayer is decent, the final boss is a lot of fun, the Crush 40 songs are once again charming, and I just can't bring myself to hate Sonic Heroes. I don't usually revisit this one unless I'm in the right mood. I especially love replaying the PC version with all the mods, including the ability to play in proper widescreen and whatnot. It's probably the closest thing to an HD port of the game we're gonna get, especially since I don't think a Sonic Heroes remaster is happening anytime soon, mainly because Sonic X Shadow Generations isn't out yet. At the moment, Sonic Heroes has yet to be ported or made backwards compatible to current systems, and the PC version has yet to be added to Steam, which is really strange. Like, it's literally right here for Sega to put on stores. But when it comes to the console versions, it should be noted that the PlayStation 2 version was made available on PlayStation Network, but for whatever reason, it never came to the American PSN store. To be expected, this is still the worst version of the game, but it's on PS3 if any of you have this console, and have a way to purchase the game outside the US. Personally, I think the main console version that should have been made backwards compatible at this point was the original Xbox version. It is playable on 360, but the game emulates pretty horribly on that console, especially the jittery frame rate on the FMVs, which could really give you a headache after a while. Plus, the loading screens and some of the graphics are broken. So yeah, if you're gonna play Xbox Heroes, make sure you're playing it on the original console and not the 360 because the emulation isn't too great. And I don't want to hear comments from people who are just like, I grew up playing this game on 360 and I still loved it. Good for you, you're like one step above the people who played the PS2 version and still love the game. Like, that's great, but you're still missing out on the better versions. The most obvious solution to this would have been making the original Xbox version backwards compatible on the Xbox One and the Series X/S, since both those consoles have a better emulator. But to this day, none of the original Xbox Sonic games were added to the backwards compatibility program. That's such a damn shame because with better hardware, the Xbox version of Sonic Heroes easily could have become the best console version if it was playable on Series X. It's such a missed opportunity. While I am pretty disappointed that we haven't gotten a recent port of Sonic Heroes, I will say, I do think a Heroes remaster of some kind will likely happen soon, especially with how frequently the game gets trending because of fans desperately wanting Sega to remaster it. Whether it's going to be a full remake from the ground up, or a simple port of the main game, we'll have to wait and see, but nothing's official yet. I've personally been waiting over a decade for an HD Sonic Heroes, ever since SA2 got its HD port in 2012, despite that version's flaws. Who knows if and when Sonic Heroes will finally get the love and respect from Sega that it deserves, but for me, it'll always be a Sonic game I'll hold near and dear to my heart, and I'm glad I got to revisit it again to give it a more proper analysis. Also, no stupid ass rating at the end that doesn't really match up to how I feel about the game, you know, like last time.
I'll give Sonic Heroes a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, the rating looks low, but I still say go play this game if you're interested. It's a ton of fun.
A 6.5? You fucking idiot. I joked about this earlier, but Sonic Heroes really does feel like the end of the Dreamcast era, despite never being playable on that console. Well, until some crazy Sonic fan decides to decompile this game just to port it there. It's obviously still up for debate if this game even belongs in the Dreamcast era, but I think it has its place. With all things considered, we'd never really get a Sonic game in the future that quite captured the look or feel of Sonic Heroes ever again, which is both good and bad if you really think about it. Sonic Heroes is a charming little game, and it's crazy to think it's 20 years old now. So until we get the eventual HD remaster, remake, whatever the hell it'll be, and if it'll be a decent version, or a completely bastardized one at launch similar to Color's Ultimate, I guess go play Sonic Heroes on your GameCube/Wii, or your original Xbox, or track down the PC version and mod it, and avoid the PS2 version. Thank you all for sitting through this incredibly lengthy re-review of a weird, but charming 3D Sonic game from an era of gaming that I'll always cherish. If you're watching this in the probably 6 to 7 hour Dreamcast era compilation video, you're a saint. Thank you for supporting my content. Now please go outside, Mom misses you. I'm gonna head out for now and also stop wasting all your time with my constant rambling about this stupid blue rodent and his colorful set of friends. Also, Sega, please don't butcher this game horribly when you guys inevitably do this Sonic Heroes remaster. I know you guys watch my videos. I begged you guys multiple times to put Dreamcast Sonic in a future game, and then you just casually announce he's gonna be a skin in Sonic X Shadow Generations? He looks proper too! I'm glad Dreamcast Sonic is coming back. Also, fuck you, SADX! I win! Okay, I'm done. I'll see you all in the next review, and thanks for watching.
All right! Our next adventure awaits us, so there's no time to waste. Yeah! We're Sonic Heroes!
Oh my god, I almost forgot to mention this, but in Sonic Lost World, that game's invincibility music is the Sonic Heroes theme. I don't know why this is the case. My main theory is that Sonic Lost World came out in 2013, which was the 10th anniversary of Sonic Heroes, so maybe someone at Sonic Team thought, oh, we should pay homage to it. So they just slipped in the theme song there. It's weird. I don't get it. Whatever. Good night.
Now let's hear that awesome theme song.
Sonic Heroes, Sonic Heroes, something and something, I forgot the song, except the word Sonic Heroes, Sonic Heroes.
Jimmy is a talented singer, we all know.
What?